Chapter 241, Medicine King Cauldron returns to the Xuanwang realm. After verifying the metamorphosis of his escape technique, Yi Feipeng tirelessly began to explore his other gains. Wind blades, wind prisons, windstorms. Even though they were far from reaching the strength of the original green wind, after incorporating the true meaning of the green wind, their power had qualitatively improved compared to ordinary spells. In Li Fan's eyes, the spells Yi Feipeng, who was currently in the qi condensation stage, displayed had destructive power almost approaching the mid-foundation establishment stage. However, between this green wind true intent and the heavenly calamity sword intent that Zhang Haobo had comprehended in the past, it was really hard to say which was stronger. If Li Fan had to choose, he would still choose the heavenly calamity sword intent. After all, in terms of lethality, the green wind was weaker than the heavenly calamity sword by more than one step. And Li Fan was cautious in his actions and generally would not engage in physical conflict. Once he made a move, it would definitely be a situation of, either you die, or I die. Naturally, the heavenly calamity sword intent was more suitable than the green wind I equals true intent in many aspects. After his practice, Yi Feipeng, who had made rapid progress in strength, didn't return to the deserted island to show off. Instead, he quietly returned to that mysterious space. After waiting for a while, he followed a weak strand of green light again and swallowed it. Unfortunately, judging by his regretful expression, it seemed that the harvest was not significant. After that, the discouraged fatty leisurely returned to the island and challenged Xiao Heng. Unexpectedly, after just going out for a while, Yi Feipeng's strength had undergone such a huge change. Caught off guard, Xiao Heng, even with the full power of the sea-fixing sword technique, could only persist for nearly half a day before being defeated. Yi Feipeng, who won against Xiao Heng for the first time, laughed heartily, patted Xiao Heng's shoulder, and swaggered away humming a tune. Watching Yi Feipeng's back, Xiao Heng was initially shocked and unbelieving. But then, his face gradually became serious. Without saying a word, he started practicing in seclusion. Under his influence, the atmosphere on the once lively deserted island gradually became somewhat solemn. The usual playing and fooling around decreased significantly, and Su Xiaomei, Zhang Haobo, and the others also began diligent cultivation. Very good, you still need to provide enough pressure to have enough motivation. Although the little fatty is not an exceptional talent, he happens to help motivate the others. From this perspective alone, my investment is not in vain. Watching all of this, Li Fan nodded in satisfaction. The little guys were working hard, and Li Fan couldn't slack off either. Withdrawing his attention, Li Fan immersed himself in cultivation again. Mid-15th year, a fiery meteor illuminated the sky. Soon after, it quickly cut through the sky and disappeared. All the cultivators who witnessed it naturally felt an indescribable palpitation in their hearts. Some cultivators wanted to trace its whereabouts, but all efforts were in vain. At present, in the entire cultivation world, only Li Fan knew that this fiery meteor was the Medicine King Cauldron that had broken through the realm boundary and re-entered the cultivation world. However, Zhao Shuyuan's years of manipulations were gradually showing results. Many cultivators suddenly recalled the occasional rumor that was considered a joke. The Medicine King Cauldron was about to return to the Xuanwang realm. Only those who possessed the minor Medicine King Cauldron could enter it. So, involuntarily, they began to speculate. Could it be that this fiery meteor is the Medicine King Cauldron? Although it was currently an unfounded guess, it didn't stop them from further verification. Therefore, some practitioners skilled in deduction and calculation, half out of curiosity and half at the request of others, began to calculate the origin of the fiery meteor. Unexpectedly, what caught everyone off guard was that there seemed to be a mysterious force attached to this fiery meteor. All the deduction techniques performed on it were completely ineffective. It was as if the heavenly secrets had been disrupted, plunged into chaos. Forceful deductions not only yielded no results but also carried the risk of backlash. In this way, it stirred up the curiosity of the practitioners. Even if this fiery meteor wasn't the Medicine King Cauldron, it definitely concealed enormous secrets. Driven by the allure of hidden opportunities, countless practitioners began to search for the trace of the fiery meteor. On this day, in the Tianquan mirror, Li Fan's clone, who was testing the development of the human body's secrets, received an extremely excited message from Zhao Shuyuan. It's a hit, it's a hit. Fellow Taoist Fan Lin, overnight, the number of people inquiring about the minor Medicine King Cauldron has multiplied by several times. This appearance of the meteor is just perfect. I was worried that the various measures taken before would have little effect. Li Fan coughed lightly and asked, "Did you sell the cauldrons in your possession?" "Huh, fellow Taoist's voice sounds a bit weak, did you get injured?" Zhao Shuyuan didn't immediately answer but rather asked with some doubt. "Cough, it's fine, just a slight deviation during cultivation. It's nothing serious," Li Fan casually replied. Zhao Shuyuan then returned to the main topic, "Hee, fellow Taoist, rest assured, I've prepared for so long. How could I easily sell them? The appreciation of these minor medicine king cauldrons has just begun. Next, following fellow Taoist's suggestion, I plan to invite a master diviner to endorse these cauldrons. After the atmosphere is appropriately heated up, I'll collaborate with others to organize a grand auction. I'll sell one of them at the auction first, testing the market. What do you think of my plan, fellow Taoist? Is there anything that needs improvement?" Since Li Fan gave him advice last time, Zhao Shuyuan regarded him as extraordinary and believed that Li Fan had few equals in the world of commerce. Therefore, he valued Li Fan's opinions greatly. Instead of immediately expressing his opinion, Li Fan, in the Tianquan mirror, searched and reviewed all the recent events related to the fiery meteor. After contemplating for a moment, he said, "Hee, the situation has changed. In my opinion, there is no need to invite someone to endorse it now. The fact that the meteor can shield itself from the heavenly secrets is the best publicity in itself. Products that are mysterious and leave room for imagination are more valuable. If you really want to take action, consider having this divination master remain silent." Zhao Shuyuan was puzzled for a moment. "Silent? What does that mean?" Li Fan smiled. "Let this master claim that during the divination of the minor medicine king cauldron's origin, he suffered backlash and was seriously injured. Furthermore, he needs to go into seclusion and rest for a while." After thinking about it, Zhao Shuyuan felt the brilliance of this approach. Compared to what others promote, most people prefer to believe in their own imagination. "Fellow Taoist, this method is ingenious, truly ingenious," Zhao Shuyuan praised repeatedly. "When the auction is held, avoid secretly inflating prices or any such activities. Even after the auction ends, ensure the safety of the cultivators who successfully bid for the minor medicine king cauldron. Avoid incidents of killing for treasures. In short, for the first auction, don't aim for significant profits. Just make sure to thoroughly publicize the fame of the minor medicine king cauldron." Li Fan provided advice to Zhao Shuyuan one by one. Chapter 242, Breaking Through the Bottleneck Quickly. With all the advice from Li Fan, Zhao Shuyuan felt like he had struck gold. He promptly took his leave with great joy to make the necessary arrangements. Cough. The clone coughed and spat out a mouthful of blood. No wonder nowadays, there's only theoretical research, and no one is truly practicing the human body's secrets method. Compared to the new law that can advance guaranteed when the conditions are met, the progress in developing the human body's potential is not only slow but also risky. It relies solely on self-exploration, and a slight mistake can result in depleted vitality and serious damage to one's vitality. Fortunately, it's just a clone, so there's no need to worry about any aftermath. As long as I can accumulate experience, it's a gain. After purchasing a dragon tiger pill to replenish vitality, Li Fan swallowed it. His complexion quickly became rosy, and the clone once again entered into the experimental exploration. The remaining time of the 15th year passed in a hurry. In the 16th year, with the sudden emergence of two forces promoting cultivation within his body, Li Fan trembled all over and woke up from seclusion. There was no more room for improvement in cultivation, and he couldn't make any progress. Li Fan knew that he had already reached the foundation establishment perfection. He only needed to break through the bottleneck to start forming his golden core. The two forces of feedback in his body came from Yi Feipeng and Xiao Heng. With a thought, he checked the records of the blue crystal in the sea of consciousness, detailing the events that had occurred to the two individuals during this period. After swallowing the green wind true intent, Yi Feipeng's cultivation speed increased significantly. In a short half-year, he reached the perfection of the qi condensation. Seemingly without encountering any bottlenecks, he emulated Zhang Haobo from his memories and used the green wind true intent to build his foundation. After successfully establishing his foundation, Yi Feipeng returned to the deserted island, proudly flaunting his success to everyone. He even took on the tone of an elder, lecturing Xiao Heng and others. Stimulated by this, Xiao Heng became more devoted to his cultivation. A month later, After reaching qi condensation perfection, Xiaoheng went to the altar in the White Bone Realm and obtained the top-grade human treasure, the Burial Sea Bone Sword. He successfully entered the foundation establishment stage. This foundation treasure was naturally prepared by Li Fan for him. After establishing his foundation, the first thing Xiaoheng did was to challenge Yi Feipeng again. Both had recently advanced, and neither could precisely control their own strength. After battling for a long time, they couldn't determine the winner and had to settle for a draw. Sighing, Xiaoheng's initial excitement disappeared. In contrast, Yi Feipeng, who was originally self-satisfied, felt a renewed sense of crisis. Instead of staying on the deserted island, Yi Feipeng went out to practice and search for opportunities based on the memories from his past life. Li Fan then checked the situations of the other individuals. Among them, Su Xiaomei progressed the fastest and had the highest cultivation. Although she was still a child and spent most of her time playing every day, without much determination to diligently cultivate, her excellent talent had brought her to the late stage of qi condensation. It was believed that she was not far from breaking through to the foundation establishment stage. Next was Zhang Haobo, who had reached the mid-stage of qi condensation. Su Changyu and the Yin sisters had already purified themselves of the miasma and officially embarked on the path of immortality. Feeling the occasional emergence of the corresponding feedback cultivation from their bodies, Li Fan seemed like a diligent farmer. It was as if he saw green leeks rushing out of the ground, growing vigorously, or as if he were witnessing a golden wheat field in autumn, with heavy ears of wheat bending the stalks. The joy of the harvest overflowed. Under the delight, a sudden comprehension occurred, and there was a sense of relief in his heart. The arduous bottleneck broke without any effort. There was no longer a barrier ahead, it was a smooth path. As long as he could comprehend the laws of heaven and earth, he could then condense the golden core effortlessly. Unexpectedly, everything went so smoothly this time, making Li Fan feel optimistic. However, Li Fan remained very clear-headed. He had stayed in the later stage of foundation establishment for so long, and had laboriously accumulated strength for a breakthrough. Moreover, he had only broken through the bottleneck now, and there was still a distance to go before truly condensing the golden core. To comprehend the laws of heaven and earth. Recalling the various information he had read in the Tianxuan mirror and scenes from the previous life when Zhang Haobo condensed a false core with the water wind sword technique, Li Fan silently contemplated, with my accumulated experience, condensing the golden core is just a simple matter. Whether it's the water law corresponding to the Kong Yun Si or the sword law corresponding to the Kong Yun Si 28 swords, or even the wind law that Zhang Haobo and Yi Feipeng have dealt with. By choosing any one of them and studying it slightly, I believe I can condense the core with little effort. But, the golden core formed in this way is far from being worthy of my foundation treasure, truth. Creating something out of nothing, making the false appear true. This is the root of my foundation treasure. This is also why I can transform truth into any heavenly treasure that I have absorbed. All heavenly treasures are at my disposal. In terms of the golden core, it would be. Li Fan's thoughts paused for a moment. All laws of heaven and earth are my laws. If an ordinary cultivator is forming the golden core, they would only condense one or a few pure laws. So what I need to do is to condense a myriad of golden core laws. Li Fan took a deep breath, suppressing the sudden throbbing in his heart. For other cultivators, no matter how talented they are, even if they spend their entire lives, they can't achieve this. But for me, who possesses truth, as long as I can ensure successful reincarnation repeatedly, it's trivial. However, this process will undoubtedly take an extremely long time. Perhaps I can choose a suitable law first, break through to the golden core stage, and then see. It would be best to maximize the improvement in combat power. If one were to talk about the most powerful killing power, from all the experiences and knowledge he had gained since entering the cultivation world, the heavenly calamity sword and ink death were the most terrifying. Ink death is a force of pure destruction that annihilates everything. The blue crystal in the sea of consciousness slowly emitted light, vividly replaying the scene of the past when ink death exterminated everything. At that time, the one who witnessed this scene of world destruction was just a qi condensation clone. Its perception was not enough to support me in condensing the golden core with this law. But when ink death descends again in this life, it's an excellent opportunity to add to my understanding. I can observe it again. As for the heavenly calamity sword, thinking about it, Li Fan's eyebrows slightly furrowed. This sword was filled with killing intent, chaos, madness, and tyranny. Its origin was unknown, But just the broken hilt alone could contend with the Tao integration realm green wind. Its original full strength was unimaginable. If I want to condense the golden core with the heavenly calamity sword technique, my previous accumulation may not be enough. Li Fan's gaze flickered as he thought of the scene he had seen before when the master forcibly broke into the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace. The blue ox pulled the carriage, and the master forced out the heavenly doctor. Then, all the anomalies in the heavenly palace erupted in unison. Among them, one was deeply embedded in the body of the turtle snake monster. It was the body of the heavenly calamity sword. Chapter 243, Tai absorbs the heavenly calamity. Cloudwater Heavenly Palace, Patriarch Tai. Li Fan pondered for a moment, and a plan formed in his mind. He certainly wouldn't risk his life to go to Tai Hall to personally test the power of the heavenly calamity sword. However, with the formless killing intent, he didn't need to venture into danger. Using his clone, he went out and made some arrangements. Meanwhile, Li Fan's main body quietly arrived in front of the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace, waiting for an opportunity. Soon, a guide on exploring the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace appeared from an unknown source and spread throughout the entire Kongyun Sea. Initially, cultivators were skeptical of the content in this guide. However, as some cultivators conducted experiments with their lives and genuinely gained inheritances, the validity of the guide was verified. Mastering the rules of an anomaly meant avoiding almost all casualties. Therefore, the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace, which had always attracted cultivators for exploration, became even more lively. Not only did some adventurous rogue cultivators participate, but even cautious members of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, after obtaining the solution to clearing the palace, couldn't resist the temptation. They flocked to the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace, seeking their own fortunes. As Li Fan, who had been waiting for a long time, selected those with good fortune using the formless killing intent technique. He used them as his eyes to investigate the mysteries of the heavenly calamity sword. Because the guide clearly stated the method to approach Tai Hall and awaken the turtle snake monster. However, it did not mention the opportunities that could be obtained at Tai Hall. According to normal thinking, the deeper into the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace, the more valuable opportunities one would obtain. Among these adventurers, there were naturally those full of exploratory spirit and courage. Thus, under Li Fan's watchful eyes, nearly a dozen people, even after gaining benefits from various places in the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace, were still not satisfied and headed towards Tai Hall. They arrived in front of the sword forest. Although the pain of the swords piercing their hearts was terrifying, when thinking about the treasures ahead, the pain seemed to lessen significantly. The group gritted their teeth, enduring the intense pain, and eventually, they arrived at the square in front of the Tai Hall, exhausted. Following the guide, they shouted and yelled, "I am the 167th generation disciple of the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace, I request an audience with Patriarch Tai. Patriarch Tai, please come out and meet us." The shouts echoed throughout the hall. Boom! The earth trembled, and Tai Hall rose into the air. Under the frightened and expectant gazes of the crowd, the turtle snake monster actually appeared. It looked a bit bewildered as it looked at the people in front of it, taking a long time to react. However, a few more clever cultivators began to operate the inherited martial arts they obtained from the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace, proving their identities. Others quickly followed suit. For a moment, lights from various martial arts shone on Tai, as per the guide's instructions. "You guys," the slow-witted turtle snake monster finally recovered. "Are you all disciples of my Cloudwater Heavenly Palace?" It scanned each one, confirming their identities one by one. Looking at the cultivators with a wide range of expressions in front of it, its murky eyes were full of sighs and happiness. "It's been a long time since our Cloudwater Heavenly Palace was so lively. Wait a minute, it seems like I've forgotten something important." The turtle snake monster's tone changed, and its eyes suddenly became confused. Then, as if remembering something, its expression changed drastically. The square trembled, and Tai Hall shook violently. For some reason, the huge body of the turtle snake monster began to tremble uncontrollably. "Children," it spoke with a trembling voice, struggling to roar. "Run!" In front of the Tai Hall, the originally excited cultivators were all stunned. They thought they had heard it wrong. "What does it mean for us to run?" The crowd looked at each other, bewildered and puzzled. However, as the shaking of the earth became increasingly apparent and intense, the crowd finally realized that something was wrong. "Run!" The desperate voice of the Patriarch Tai rang out again. With its cry, a faint blue light appeared on the bodies of the cultivators. It was the same method as before that was capable of teleporting cultivators out of the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace. However, just as the blue light was about to take shape, a pitch-black sword with an ominous aura suddenly manifested. This time, it didn't summon a myriad of sword shadows to pierce the turtle snake monster. Instead, it seemed as if it wanted to break free from Tai's body. Sharp and grating friction sounds could be heard as Tai let out a painful cry. The spell casting for the teleportation was immediately interrupted. Buzz! The broken body of the Heavenly Calamity Sword was about to completely detach from Tai. No! The turtle snake monster roared in anger, and its body suddenly sank downward. It was as if an infinite suction force was generated inside its body. The sword was gradually reabsorbed into its body inch by inch. This action by the Patriarch Tai seemed to enrage the Heavenly Calamity Sword. Countless sword shadows fell like rain, mercilessly piercing through Tai's body. Tai screamed in pain but refused to let go. From the emergence of the original form of the Heavenly Calamity Sword to the turtle snake using its body as a scabbard to block the attacks of the Heavenly Calamity Sword, it all happened in the blink of an eye. With Tai's mournful cry, the cultivators on the square finally woke up from their stupor. With fearful expressions, they tried to escape. However, the sword forest in front had already made their arrival extremely difficult. How could they easily escape at this moment? Just as the cultivators had barely crossed half the distance of the sword forest, the Heavenly Calamity Sword finally completely broke free from Tai's body. Buzz! The sound of the sword rang out again. As if disdainful of personally taking action, the tip of the Heavenly Calamity Sword did not point towards the escaping cultivators. Instead, it aimed in the direction behind the Tai Hall. The sound of the sword rang out. Bang, 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 ... The fleeing cultivators' heads exploded one after another like watermelons, still moving forward for quite a distance until they collapsed. At the same time, Li Fan instantly lost sight of the Tai Hall. He could only vaguely see through the perspective of the cultivators exploring other areas. Just as the pitch-black Heavenly Calamity Sword raged, a giant blue hand suddenly appeared behind the Tai Hall. It grabbed the sword and forcefully thrust it back into the body of the Patriarch Tai. The ear-piercing friction sound echoed throughout the entire Cloudwater Heavenly Palace. At this moment, all the cultivators exploring inside the palace groaned, suffering varying degrees of injuries. They all revealed horrified expressions. Accompanying the screeching sound was the extremely tragic howl of the Patriarch Tai. Hanhai. The voice was like muffled thunder, rumbling all over. Tai's painful cries seemed like a sigh of relief. There was no resentment. As the Heavenly Calamity Sword regained control, the myriad sword shadows gradually disappeared. With a thunderous roar, Tai Hall descended, and Patriarch Tai fell into a deep sleep once more. Everything returned to calm. However, that giant blue hand slowly turned as pitch black as the Heavenly Calamity Sword. Chapter 244, Dual Law Golden Core Refinement. A tyrannical and frenzied intent emanated from the pitch-black giant hand. It was similar to the previously suppressed Heavenly Calamity Sword. However, before this ominous giant hand could take any action, an immense blue light suddenly lit up from behind the Tai Hall, deep within the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace. It appeared as an endless ocean suspended in the sky. Under the reflection of the blue light, the giant hand seemed to be constantly washed by endless seawater. The darkness on the giant hand slowly faded away. It reverted to its original color. The blue light suddenly withdrew, and the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace returned to silence. Many cultivators who witnessed this series of events believed that some extraordinary treasure had appeared there. Summoning their courage, they cautiously approached to see what was happening. The first thing they saw was a dozen headless corpses scattered on the ground. Their expressions changed drastically. Recalling the giant sword emitting an ominous black aura they had seen earlier, the onlookers didn't dare to make any unnecessary moves and hastily retreated. News of the sudden change and danger in the depths of the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace quickly spread through the Kongyun Sea as cultivators exchanged information. It seems that it won't be so easy to deceive people into activating the Heavenly Calamity Sword next time. However, with the Divine Transformation Tao, there isn't a difference between watching it once or multiple times. Having achieved his goal, Li Fan quietly returned to 10,000 Immortals Island. In the Tianquan mirror, he kept replaying in his mind the scene where the Heavenly Calamity Sword was unsheathed and harvested the lives of more than 10 cultivators. From the vision of heaven and earth, Li Fan saw that the spiritual energy around the cultivators, which was usually calm, became chaotic the moment the sound of the sword arrived. It seemed as if the spiritual energy turned into calamity yet flexible strings, slicing through the heads of the cultivators with each vibration. Calamity. Repeatedly comprehending it hundreds of times, Li Fan gradually gained some insights. The scene shifted, and Li Fan focused his attention on what happened afterward. An infinite amount of blue light surged into the sky, forming an inverted ocean. Majestic and spectacular, Li Fan carefully comprehended. This blue energy gives me a very familiar feeling. It seems very similar to the Kongyun Sea. But for some reason, the ocean imagery represented by this blue light seems to be much more expansive than the Kongyun Sea. Hanhai. 1. Originally, Li Fan planned to use the Heavenly Calamity and Ink Death laws to condense the golden core first. However, after unexpectedly witnessing the blue light of the Hanhai, Li Fan became hesitant. This blue light of the Hanhai seemed to have the same origin as the Kongyun Sea. Since Li Fan was extremely familiar with the Kongyun Sea and had personally used the Kanghai Pearl to build his foundation, using the Hanhai Law to condense the golden core would evidently have more advantages. From the scene where the Heavenly Calamity infected and transformed the blue light, it can be deduced that the Heavenly Calamity Law might have some impact on the mind, making it difficult to suppress the violent killing intent. And the blue light of the Hanhai can serve as a buffer. Along with the Ink Death Law, if the Hanhai Law falls short, it can be supplemented with the Azure Flame Law, condensing into a single fourfold golden core. With the basic plan in mind, Li Fan temporarily put aside other matters and immersed himself in closed-door cultivation. The duration of condensing the golden core varied based on individual aptitude and the different laws one cultivated. Previously, with the support of the will of the Kongyun Sea, Zhang Haobo took just over a month to condense a false core using the water and wind laws. However, if it were Li Fan, it might not be so easy. His foundation treasure quietly transformed into the Kanghai Pearl. Threads of blue light, representing the power of the water attribute law, surged from the Kanghai Pearl. Like silkworm silk, it wove and surrounded the Kanghai Pearl. Li Fan envisioned the scene of Hanhai taking action. He blended his own law comprehension into it. The blue light surging from the Kanghai Pearl seemed to undergo a change in an instant. It became deeper and more ancient. Since the Kanghai Pearl shared many similarities with the Hanhai Law, this process was much faster than Li Fan had anticipated. Gradually, a deep blue halo enveloped the surroundings of the Kanghai Pearl. A very rudimentary golden core took shape. If I continue like this, a pure golden core using the Hanhai Law might be condensed immediately. However, that's not my goal. Next, add the Heavenly Calamity Law. In Li Fan's Sea of Consciousness, the moment when the Heavenly Calamity Sword was unsheathed kept replaying. Strands of darkness suddenly surged out from the core of the foundation treasure, like ink overflowing in the blue light. But what made Li Fan frown slightly was that the black color representing the Heavenly Calamity Law didn't last for long. It persisted for a moment within the enveloping blue light and then disappeared without a trace. Li Fan, who had read the experiences of many cultivators who had formed a core, immediately understood. This was because the Heavenly Calamity Law lacked a source within Li Fan's body. It could only manifest briefly like water without a source, unable to last. The Hanhai Law naturally had an endless source in the Kanghai Pearl. This was also the reason why cultivators often couldn't simultaneously master multiple laws when forming the core. Without one's own foundation treasure as the root, condensing a core with multiple laws was not easy. Li Fan tried for a long time, but the speed of condensing the Heavenly Calamity Law was always slower than its dissipation. After pondering for a moment, Li Fan temporarily gave up the attempt. Instead, he began to contemplate the scene when Zhang Haobo was forming his core. The black sword intense shadow, magnified countless times, stood between heaven and earth. Green wind blew in from the sword tip above, and the blue water flowed in from the sword hilt below. The three colors, blue, black, and green, mixed together, and the sword body slowly condensed. Li Fan's eyes brightened, showing signs of deep contemplation. Zhang Haobo used the water and wind laws, which naturally exists in heaven and earth, combined with his own Heavenly Calamity Sword intent to form a core together. The natural laws of heaven and earth are endless, so there's no need to worry about source. Perhaps this is why many cultivators have to travel far and wide to personally comprehend and absorb the laws of heaven and earth when forming their core. But I can't do that. The Heavenly Calamity Law, the Hanhai Law, and the Ink Death Law, each one is more dangerous than the other. Going to the scene to observe it in person would probably not lead to the formation of the core but would instead cost me my life. Fortunately, I have truth. With a thought, the foundation treasure transformed into the heavenly calamity sword intent in the blink of an eye. The blue Hanhai law, which was originally gathered into a ball, lost its foundation in an instant and began to dissipate. However, it had already formed a self-sustaining momentum, and its dissipation speed slowed down considerably. During this time, Li Fan had enough time to condense the heavenly calamity law. The black color gradually intensified. It was as if layer after layer of dark shackles were added to the blue water ball. Time slowly passed. After the embryonic form of the heavenly calamity law was established, Li Fan promptly switched the foundation treasure back to the Kanghai pearl, restoring the blue Hanhai law. Repeating this process continuously, slowly, within Li Fan's dantian. The golden core shadow centered around truth gradually took shape. Asterisk 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 asterisk. TN. Hanhai translates roughly to, vast sea. Chapter 245, Unexpected Conflict. Heavenly Calamity Law, Hanhai Law. If I continue to refine like this, it probably won't be long before I can achieve golden core with these two laws. Li Fan felt a slight joy in his heart. However, just at the moment when this thought arose in his mind, a sense of crisis suddenly surged into his heart. It was as if he was facing that mysterious and unpredictable heavenly doctor. The severity of the crisis made him feel horrified and inexplicably shocked. Li Fan's deep cultivation process was suddenly interrupted. His expression became extremely serious, pondering in confusion. Where is this premonition of danger coming from? Li Fan was always very confident in his intuition. Several times before, it had saved him from life-threatening situations. Therefore, facing this sudden surge of danger, Li Fan had to take it seriously. Truth kept changing, maintaining the embryonic form of the heavenly calamity and Hanhai laws that he had finally condensed. Stopping the core formation process, Li Fan began to contemplate. However, after much contemplation and searching, he still couldn't find the reason. Without recklessly attempting to form the core, Li Fan instead thought about ways to resolve the issue. Heavenly calamity, Hanhai, it may be that I cannot form a core only with these two laws. Although it's not clear why, there must be a deeper reason behind it. Let's just set aside why this result occurred for now and treat, cannot form a core only with the heavenly calamity and Hanhai laws as a fact. Since these two don't work, then let's add a third. The azure flame illusionary spirit suddenly appeared in his sea of consciousness. Flying to Li Fan's side, it pointed at his dantian. The azure flame law slowly joined the core formation process. As time passed, the heavenly calamity, Hanhai, and azure flame laws gradually formed a three-pronged situation. The embryonic form of the golden core slowly stabilized. At this point, Li Fan once again had the idea of completely forming the core. The sense of crisis struck again. However, this time it was much milder than before. It seems that my approach is effective. But what is the reason for this? Is it because the heavenly calamity and Hanhai laws are dangerous and need to be diluted? Recalling how the heavenly calamity was trapped by the green wind and the peculiarities of Hanhai, Li Fan could only make such a guess. If my speculation is correct, then as long as I add other laws during the core formation process, it should be fine. With my current ability, maintaining the simultaneous formation of 4 laws is already the limit. The remaining choice for one law includes green wind, crimson flame. Li Fan shook his head inwardly. Of these two, one was a jailer, and the other was an executioner. In terms of strength and rank, Li Fan felt that they were not on the same level as the heavenly calamity and Hanhai laws. As for the azure flame, although it seemed a bit weaker, its ability to maintain absolute rationality was the reason Li Fan prioritized it. 16 years have already passed. This life, crimson flame and ink death are expected to annihilate everything by the 28th year. I still have 12 years, so I can take my time. Li Fan pondered, resisting the temptation to advance, temporarily giving up on forming the core. The power of the laws that had been condensed with great difficulty in his dantian gradually dissipated. However, Li Fan had no regrets. The terrifying power of ink death's annihilation was something no cultivator could resist. Even if it was just a weakened version at the golden core level, it must still be terrifying. For the sake of this, waiting for 12 years was completely worth it. The day when the ink death annihilates the Kong Yun Sea is the day I achieve golden core. However, during this time, my cultivation cannot advance. The feedback cultivation of the mountain meditation technique is going to be wasted. Su Xiaomei, Zhang Haobo, and the others breaking through to the foundation establishment stage is basically a sure thing. After that, there might be a huge amount of feedback from Yi Feipeng if he reaches Dao integration. Li Fan suddenly felt a pang of pain, as if countless grains were being wasted before his eyes. I have to figure out a way to save this surplus cultivation. Just as he was about to search for a solution in the Tianquan mirror, a solemn message suddenly appeared. From this instant, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance enters Level B preparedness. All Province Guardian arrays are to be activated. All cultivators are forbidden from moving across provinces. All institutional members must return to the province capital as soon as possible and await further instructions. Upon discovering foreign cultivators, execute on the spot. Li Fan's eyes twitched, and he abruptly stood up. What's going on? Why did we suddenly enter a state of preparedness? Level B. Has the conflict with the Five Elders Association already started? In an instant, several thoughts flashed through Li Fan's mind. This sudden event was completely beyond his expectations. He didn't know what went wrong, leading to the occurrence of a major event that had never happened before. Quickly suppressing these distracting thoughts, Li Fan began to inquire from his friends. Currently, he had a wide range of friendships, and his network was quite extensive. One by one, he sent out inquiries. What's happening with this star? Inside the 10,000 Immortals communication talisman, among the stars that represented the identities of many cultivators, one star, although bright, showed a desolate gray color. This indicated that the cultivator represented by this star had fallen. Li Fan clicked on this star, and the identity of the fallen cultivator instantly appeared in his mind. Kong Yunxi, Medicine Hall's Chen Ying. Li Fan was shocked. How could a nascent soul cultivator fall so easily? Moreover, didn't he go to those 5-element subworlds? Wait a minute, could it be that this battle is related to those 5-element subworlds? In an instant, Li Fan seemed to think of something. In the 12th life, in the 16th year, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance discovered 4 hidden subworlds near the wood attribute subworld. These 5 subworlds belong to the gold, wood, water, fire, and earth attributes, and were arranged as if in a unified formation. The discovery of these 5 elemental subworlds attracted the coveting eyes of the 5 Elders Association. A large-scale battle erupted, leading to the fall of a soul transformation powerhouse from the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. The casualties of the 5 Elders were unknown, but they were successfully repelled. If my guess is correct. In a flash, Li Fan seemed to figure out the cause of the incident. In the 12th life, the 5 Elders Association only knew that the 10,000 Immortals Alliance had discovered subworlds corresponding to the 5 elements. They might not be clear about the specific situation inside those subworlds. Therefore, after trying and failing to enter, they gave up and retreated. However, in this life, due to the disturbance caused by the spirit mist grass, the Tianquan mirror had to intervene to stabilize the situation and mark it. Although it quelled the storm with a single word, it inadvertently revealed the situation of the wood attribute subworld. The scale of this subworld is extremely large, with extremely high wood attribute spiritual energy, and an extremely rich variety of spiritual plants and herbs. Recalling the wording of the Tianquan mirror at the time, Li Fan's face changed dramatically. The 3 consecutive uses of the word, extreme, fully illustrated the extraordinary value of this subworld. Even one of the 5-element subworlds had such remarkable value. It was unimaginable what treasures might exist in the other 4 elemental subworlds. Understanding the key points, Li Fan couldn't help but feel enlightened. No wonder we suddenly entered a state of preparedness. It should be the 5 Elders Association taking decisive action. Chapter 246, Battle in Tianling Province. I wonder how the specific situation is on the side of the 5-element subworlds. From what Li Fan knew, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and the 5 Elders Association had not waged war for about 300 years. They occasionally had friction, but at most, it was limited to a single province. Situations like this one, where the entire area was prepared for war, were extremely rare. Li Fan continued to inquire about the reasons for the outbreak of the conflict from his friends, trying to confirm whether his speculations were true. Unfortunately, the war seemed to have a very high level of secrecy. The responses Li Fan received were all uncertain. The ominous clouds of war hung over everyone. The originally carefree atmosphere of 10,000 Immortals Island became desolate and filled with an oppressive air. Everyone's faces showed a subtle and uneasy expression. As a formation repairer of the formation hall, Li Fan also received task assignments. He followed the members of the Martial Hall, forming a team to patrol along the border of the Kongyun Sea. They were also tasked with setting up formations while being vigilant against spies from the Five Elders Association. The leader of Li Fan's team was a cultivator named Shan Wu, a mid-stage golden core expert. In the team, there were also Huan Sui and several other Foundation establishment cultivators Li Fan had previously met during the beast extermination task. Li Fan's patrol team was not the only one. Almost all the mobilizable forces of 10,000 Immortals Island were put into action, indicating the importance attached to this war. As for Zhang Zhengji and Du Xingchang, they were reportedly requisitioned by the headquarters and went to the front line. When Zhang Zhengji and Du Xingchang unite, they can deploy their ultimate technique, the Crystal World, and become comparable to an ordinary nascent soul cultivator. And Zhang Ziliang also seems to have been called to the front line. Are nascent soul cultivators the main force in the war? Li Fan contemplated inwardly. The scale of this war seemed to exceed his expectations. Other things are not a problem, but I'm afraid that if the reborn Yi Feipeng finds out that things are different from what he remembers. With his suspicious and cautious nature, he might just give up the plan to kill Crimson Flame. Then my plans for this life will be in vain. With a thought, the scene shifted to the chubby Yi Feipeng. What slightly relieved Li Fan was that the Kongyun Sea was large enough. Moreover, Yi Feipeng had always avoided the 10,000 Immortals Alliance due to certain reasons. He was currently unaware of the large-scale war occurring in the cultivation world. I hope the war can end soon and not extend to the Kongyun Sea. In the face of unexpected events, even a reincarnated person like Li Fan couldn't control much. It must be said that the 10,000 Immortals Alliance had strong control over the low-level cultivators. The confidentiality of the war was almost impeccable. On the surface, the Kongyun Sea seemed a bit tense, but there was absolutely no sign of full-out war. If it weren't for the constantly rising permission level reminding Li Fan of the war, he wouldn't have sensed anything. Li Fan was completely unaware that in a distant and unknown area, a monumental battle was taking place. Time passed slowly. Several months had passed, and the 16th year was coming to an end. During this period, apart from occasionally repelling a few small groups of enemies, the war had not affected the Kongyun Sea much, as Li Fan had hoped. And under the continuous completion of wartime merit tasks, Li Fan's permission level had also increased to 18. On this day, the prompt from the Tianshuan mirror finally came. The dust of war settled, and the state of preparedness that had lasted for more than 8 months was lifted. As for the result of the war, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance naturally emerged victorious. After the intelligence was declassified, through enthusiastic discussions and reviews among the cultivators, Li Fan finally gained a rough understanding of the causes and consequences of this war. 9 months ago, a team of 10,000 Immortals Alliance cultivators, tasked with developing the wood attribute subworld, discovered during their research that the wood attribute spiritual energy in the subworld was not like ordinary subworlds. Instead of being consumed and requiring a long time to recover, the spiritual energy seemed to come from an unknown source, continuously replenishing itself. It seemed as if it would never be completely depleted. After a large batch of spiritual plants consumed a huge amount of spiritual energy, it would immediately be replenished. This discovery greatly surprised the cultivators because this spiritual energy was obviously not generated by the wood attribute subworld itself, nor did it come from the Xuanwang realm outside. After analysis, the cultivators believed that this wood attribute subworld belonged to an extremely rare composite subworld. And the rapidly generated spiritual energy came from the supplementation of other subworlds. After a rather convoluted search, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance team finally discovered the complete form of the 5-element subworlds. This was a tremendous achievement. In the midst of their jubilation, the exploration team couldn't help but feel a bit worried. Because the location where the 5-element subworlds were found was quite awkward. It was located in Tianling Province, which bordered the territory of the 5 Elders Association. Having such a treasure located on the front line made people uneasy. So, the exploration team transmitted the information to the 10,000 Immortals Alliance headquarters. While explaining the situation, they also hoped that the headquarters could send support to move the 5-element subworlds back to the hinterland, near Tianyu Province. Who would have thought that before the support from the headquarters arrived, members of the 5 Elders Association had already come? Somehow, the information had leaked. The surprise attack by the Five Elders Association caught everyone off guard. The entire exploration team inside the Wood Attribute subworld was annihilated. According to the information they transmitted before their deaths, the assault by the Five Elders Association cultivators even included 3 DAO integration powerhouses. Under the joint efforts of the 3 DAO integration cultivators, the 5 element subworlds were dragged and quickly moved towards the territory of the Five Elders Association. Not only did they infiltrate the territory secretly, but in broad daylight, the Five Elders Association slaughtered many members of the Alliance and plundered precious subworld resources. This was a blatant act of humiliation. 10,000 Immortals Alliance headquarters immediately decided to enter Class B wartime preparedness status, mobilizing 8 DAO integration cultivators and several soul transformation cultivators to pursue the Five Elders Association. They must retrieve the 5 element subworlds. Then they ordered each province to be on high alert, preventing the Five Elders Association from deceiving them and having ulterior motives. Relocating a subworld was not an easy task. Even if DAO integration experts were involved, it was still difficult. When the 8 DAO integration cultivators caught up with the Five Elders Association, ready to take action, they suddenly discovered that the other party had indeed planned for a long time. In addition to the 3 DAO integration cultivators who launched the surprise attack, there were secretly 5 more DAO integration experts lying in ambush. 8 DAO integration Immortal Sages against 8 DAO integration Immortal Sages. A battle erupted immediately. The process and outcome of the battle were unknown. All that was known was that after this battle, the 5 element subworlds remained in place. Both the 10,000 Immortals Alliance and the 5 Elders Association tacitly recalled the surviving DAO integration cultivators. Afterwards, a war mainly involving soul transformation and below cultivators unfolded around the 5 element subworlds. The war lasted for nearly 8 months. Numerous cultivators fell. Death announcements occurred in the sky from dawn to dusk, never stopping for a moment. In the end, when both sides had somewhat depleted their vitality, the war inexplicably came to a halt. 10,000 Immortals Alliance claimed internally that they had won the war because the 5 element subworlds were indeed later moved back to the hinterland of Tianyu province. Chapter 247, Setbacks in Fish Gambling. As for the true nature of the war, it was beyond Li Fan's current knowledge. As the dark clouds lingering over everyone gradually dispersed, and the mobilized cultivators returned to their hometowns, the 8-month-long war left an impression on people as if it were a dream and hadn't happened. It was only when occasionally mentioning those fellow Taoists who were lost that the memories of this fierce war would flicker in their minds. Li Fan naturally had acquaintances among the fallen cultivators. The first was the medicinal hall's Chen Ying, who died early in the ambush by the Five Elders Association. In the Kong Yunxi's Martial Hall, Zhang Zhengji and Du Xingcheng both perished. The Formation Hall also suffered heavy losses. Out of the 3 mobilized, Gong Boyu and another nascent soul formation master named Mu Bowen were involved in a battle between soul transformation experts and did not survive. Only Zhang Ziliang survived. There were countless other cultivators holding various positions on 10,000 Immortals Island who had only briefly interacted with Li Fan and had perished in this war. The brutality of the Tianling province war was evident. Fortunately, what the world lacked least was cultivators who would step forward and sacrifice their lives for a cause. With a single notice from the Tianshuan Mirror, the war and the deaths it brought were quickly forgotten by everyone. Within 3 years, every cultivator could purchase a technique at a discounted rate of 70% off the original price. Each person was limited to purchasing one, and it was not transferable. Once this news came out, the cultivators who were still somewhat melancholic all perked up and became excited. Those who were just barely short on contribution points now had enough to afford their desired technique at a discounted price. They naturally seized the opportunity and joyfully began cultivation. As for those who were considerably short on contribution points but could barely afford the technique with 3 years of effort, they started frantically taking on tasks to accumulate contribution points. Finally, those who had little remaining contribution points and had no chance even with 3 years of effort resorted to borrowing or get-rich-quick schemes. As the most renowned method of sudden wealth accumulation in the Kong Yun Sea, the upcoming fish gambling event at the end of the 16th year attracted several times more participants than usual. The sky above the islands was densely packed with people who came to join the excitement. Li Fan was naturally among them. He vividly remembered that this time, the Fish King was a white pomfret. Although his contribution points were already sufficient, Li Fan wouldn't let go of any opportunity for wealth growth. Choosing his target, he placed his bet. The observation period of 27 days quickly passed. Soon, the day when the lake water erupted towards the sky arrived, and the grand prize was born. Most cultivators had bloodshot eyes, looking tense, not daring to make any unusual sounds, only staring intently at the countless fish struggling with each other in the lake below. The final result surprised Li Fan. The fish king this time was not the white pomfret he remembered. Instead, it was a spirited swordfish covered in golden light. I won, the grand prize, I won. Amid the murmurs and curses of the cultivators, a particularly excited howl stood out. Looking in the direction of the sound, Li Fan saw a young cultivator with disheveled hair and tattered clothes, yet was incredibly excited, his face flushed. Grand prize! I won the grand prize! As if afraid that others wouldn't know, he shouted frantically. Ignoring many murderous gazes, the young cultivator laughed heartily, looking almost crazy. Damn, isn't this Han Yi? Heard that he got swindled by some foundation establishment grandmaster a few years ago and became extremely miserable. Unexpectedly, fortune has turned in his favor today, and he hit the jackpot. What kind of dog shit luck is this? How come I never get a chance like this? I just lost all the few hundred contribution points I had painstakingly saved up. So many people this time, and the jackpot is winner takes all. It's the end of the year, and they're going to empty the usual prize pool. Damn, the final reward is estimated to be at least 1 million contribution points or more. After a rough estimate, the gazes of the cultivators towards Han Yi changed. Due to winning the jackpot, Han Yi, who had somewhat forgotten himself, finally noticed something amidst the increasing number of eyes fixed on him. Under the many scrutinizing gazes, his expression became increasingly nervous. Fortunately, the rules of fish gambling were still in place, and the safety of the winner was guaranteed under the public eye. Otherwise, if it was so easy to kill and seize the jackpot, the number of cultivators participating in fish gambling would surely decrease over time. It would be better to take advantage of the opportunity to promote the event widely, attracting even more cultivators in the future. A destitute foundation establishment cultivator with no way out gambled desperately and received a complete change of fortunes. From then on, they would ascend to the peak of life, with nascent soul and even soul transformation in sight. What advertising slogan could be more attractive than this living example? Under the exchanged glances of the fish gambling organizers, Han Yi was soon brought to the center of the crowd. After some calculations, the organizers immediately transferred the huge reward of 1.56 million contribution points to Han Yi on the spot. Upon receiving the reward, Han Yi's expression lost his excitement and instead became confused, as if he couldn't believe all of this was real. His face still had a somewhat blank look, and the greed that flowed from the eyes of those onlooker cultivators became more and more frightening. To ensure the safety of this fortunate winner, the fish gambling organizers decided to personally escort Han Yi back to 10,000 Immortals Island. Those cultivators who had lost all their money to Han Yi followed unwillingly. Soon, under the crowd's escort, Han Yi left the area. Only the swordfish, still quietly digesting the spiritual energy of other competing fish, remained. As well as Li Fan. Watching the swordfish's aura constantly strengthening, Li Fan couldn't help but sink into deep thought. Why is the result of this life different from what I experienced? Where was the variable? Li Fan, who lost the grand prize, didn't feel too bothered. Besides fish gambling, he had many other ways to earn a large number of contribution points. The cause behind the different result was what truly interested him. Logically, except for the increase in participants, there shouldn't be anything that could affect the result of the fish gambling. Li Fan stood still, pondering for a long time without getting a reliable answer. He decided to use the secret technique, Divine Transformation Tao, continuously replaying the scene of fish gambling in his mind. Slowly, Li Fan saw something. What Li Fan thought of as no major variables was from the perspective of a cultivator. But from the perspective of the countless fish participating in the fish gambling, variables were everywhere. Perhaps it was the change in water flow caused by some item casually discarded by a cultivator. Or it might be a fish whose trajectory was altered due to being intimidated by the aura of a cultivator. Because the fish were too weak, and the cultivators were too powerful. Those who were weak could only be dragged by the waves of the powerful and be at the mercy of their every minor action. Li Fan gained some insight. Chapter 248, Soul Transformation vs. Tao Integration. Li Fan, who had gotten the answers he wanted, did not leave immediately. Instead, he waited for the transformation of the swordfish to complete. After a long time, the swordfish, whose body had become much stronger, finally absorbed the essence of its kin completely. Satisfied, it shook off its body and swam back into the sea. However, it completely failed to notice the 5 black figures emerging from the depths of the sea, quietly approaching. Caught off guard, the swordfish fell into the encirclement of the previous fish kings. 5 ugly and ferocious-looking fish, each with strength surpassing that of the swordfish, launched successive attacks against it. Each of these fish kings was more powerful than the swordfish. Under their well-coordinated siege, the swordfish quickly found itself in a desperate situation. Blood sprayed, and it was on the verge of death. At that moment, above the sea, Li Fan sent a mass of essence into the air. This was the purest essence of flesh and blood. It was the result of Lin Fan's continuous research on the hidden potential of the human body during this period. The power contained in the essence extracted from a perfect stage foundation establishment cultivator's body was incredibly potent. For the swordfish, it was even more nourishing than swallowing all its kin before. In an instant, the wounds on its body visibly healed. Moreover, its body size was even larger than in its previous heyday. This unexpected scene left the several attacking fish kings dumbfounded. Their attacks involuntarily paused. Seizing this opportunity, the swordfish, which had been on the defensive, decisively launched a counterattack. With its ferocious body carrying overwhelming force, it ruthlessly charged towards the fiercest of the fish kings. It was as swift as lightning and practically unstoppable. Its golden spear pierced the abdomen of the fish king, ripping the body open. Dark red blood slowly drifted up to the water's surface. In an instant, the fish king met its end. The bloodthirsty swordfish, now with a red glare in its eyes, was about to turn its head to deal with the remaining fish kings. However, it discovered that the other 4 fish kings, realizing that something was wrong, had actually fled directly, each escaping for its life. The swordfish, which narrowly escaped death, was somewhat bewildered. It swam aimlessly in the sea for a long time, unable to find where the essence that saved its life came from. In the end, it could only sway its body and swim toward the depths of the ocean. Watching the swordfish leave his perception range, Li Fan faintly revealed an inexplicable smile. Casually cleaning up the traces left by the Fish King's battle, he then returned to 10,000 Immortals Island. In the Tianquan mirror, Li Fan sensed within his dantian. Above the Kanghai pearl that truth had transformed into, he saw the illusory figure of a small person sitting in meditation. This little person looked quite similar to Li Fan. The secret technique of the Tai Shang sect is indeed profound. This karmic body has stored the cultivation equivalent to 5 years of normal cultivation in this short period. It seems that everyone has made considerable progress during this time. Li Fan nodded in satisfaction with himself. The karmic body was a method Li Fan found that allowed him to store cultivation without breaking through realms. This technique was said to come from the Tai Shang primordial scripture. In the ancient cultivation world, occasionally, cultivators would practice too quickly, leading to unstable foundations. At such times, cultivators needed to actively suppress their own realm, consolidating their foundations. Each sect had its own methods, and the Tai Shang sect's method was to form an illusory figure in the dantian to contain the excess cultivation. Because the Tai Shang sect believed that an unstable foundation was a cultivation tribulation, this illusory figure was also called the tribulation body. With the karmic body, Li Fan no longer needed to worry about the feedback of the cultivation from the mountain meditation technique overflowing. However, the secret technique did not specify whether there was a limit to the cultivation that the karmic body could contain. Therefore, Li Fan needed to personally practice it to find out. This method of storing cultivation with the karmic body seems to be very similar to the purple core inside Zhang Qinmo's body. Perhaps Zhang Qinmo relied on this to suppress his cultivation all along. Thinking so, Li Fan opened the discussing Tao while seated. Zhang Qinmo's record had already soared to 186 wins and 78 draws. Still, a victor had not yet emerged. This left Li Fan somewhat helpless. As for the previously confident, "I am invincible," who claimed to have found a method to defeat Zhang Qinmo, he seemed to have disappeared into thin air and had not reappeared. Perhaps his method is not ready yet, Li Fan speculated, trying to look at the situation optimistically. With a casual glance, Li Fan was about to leave when one of the titles caught his attention. Dao Integration against Dao Integration, Tianling Province Battle Review. Intrigued, Li Fan couldn't help but click on it. The specific casualties of this battle have not been disclosed by both sides. However, based on the identities of the 16 Dao integration experts who participated in the battle, it is not difficult to draw a conclusion after thousands of simulations. The likelihood of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance losing this battle is above 85%. Unless among the soul transformation experts, there is a peerless powerhouse comparable to a Dao integration cultivator. Li Fan was engrossed in reading when he suddenly found that this piece of information had disappeared. Removed so quickly. Does this mean that there are indeed forces in the pursuit team of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance comparable to Dao integration cultivators? Interesting. Li Fan pondered silently. In the path of immortal cultivation, the greater the advancement, the greater the gap between each level. Qi condensation kills foundation establishment slaughters golden core, and golden core beheads nascent soul. Perhaps extraordinary geniuses could achieve this through their talents and magical powers. But for nascent soul to kill soul transformation, or soul transformation to behead Dao integration was an almost impossible task. Of course, the situation of pawns like Zhang Haobo was not within the scope of discussion. As for Dao integration slaughtering longevity immortal, that would eliminate the word, almost. A soul transformation cultivator comparable to Dao integration. The 10,000 Immortals Alliance's depth is truly deep. I wonder if I can contend with Dao integration experts when I reach soul transformation. I believe that even if I can't win, I should be able to protect my life. After pondering for a moment, Li Fan, seeing no more noteworthy information in discussing Dao while seated, exited the platform. After the big battle, it was time to rest and recuperate. The 17th, 18th, and 19th years were all peaceful in the Kongyun Sea. Li Fan also enjoyed a rare long period of closed-door cultivation. During these 3 years, the illusory figure of the karmic body became more and more lifelike. The jade slips delivered by Zhang Ziliang's clone were all learned and mastered. The second piece of the Dao transformation stone had also been fully absorbed. The performance of the blue crystal in his mind had almost doubled compared to the beginning, and Li Fan's use of the divine transformation Dao technique became even more skillful. As for the Heavenly Doctor's Immortal Sutra, it was indeed vast and profound. After several years, Li Fan had only preliminarily understood a small part of it. However, Li Fan was not in a hurry, he had plenty of time. After paying a visit to Zhang Ziliang and passing his test, Li Fan obtained another jade slip from him. As he was about to leave, Li Fan vaguely sensed that Zhang Ziliang's aura seemed different from before. It seemed that some inexplicable changes had occurred in him. Chapter 249, Forge of Creation. There was no concrete evidence. It was just a sudden feeling that surged in Li Fan's heart as he observed Zhang Ziliang, who remained silent, half of his body shrouded in darkness. However, Li Fan was always confident in his intuition. Perhaps witnessing the tragic deaths of the other 2 formation masters from the formation hall on the battlefield has affected him. Li Fan speculated. Without asking further questions, he kept this matter firmly in mind. After bowing respectfully, Li Fan quietly withdrew. Back in the Tianquan mirror, he carefully read the contents of the new jade slip. Compared to the first one, this one was much more profound, even delving into the knowledge of Zhang Ziliang's infinite formation. Li Fan incorporated it into the multitasking cultivation process of divine transformation Dao. Half a month later, the main body was still cultivating as usual. Meanwhile, the clone, Fan Lin, had achieved some success in the study of the human body's hidden potential. Utilizing various literary sources and continuous experimentation on his own body, combined with the descriptions in the Heavenly Doctor's Immortal Sutra, the clone tirelessly stimulated the boundless energy within him to refine and strengthen his physical body. Now, relying solely on physical strength without the use of spiritual energy, the destructive power he could unleash was comparable to late-stage Qi condensation. Since there was no special technique involved, just the basic manipulation of the hidden potential, similar to tempering oneself like a furnace, Li Fan named it the Creation Forge art. It had no real connection to creation and was mainly focused on the forging of the body, but when it came to naming, Li Fan naturally leaned towards a more domineering direction. The name, Creation Forge art, was something Li Fan found quite satisfying. Now, the clone was entering the first critical phase of practicing the Creation Forge art. From head to toe, inside and out, the overall tempering of the body had been preliminarily completed. The physical strength had reached the expected level. The next step was to draw upon the vast and endless hidden potential within the body, using it like a giant heavy hammer to violently pound the body. Similar to the process of tempering steel 100 times over, simultaneous strengthening of the body occurred when continuously hammering it. This was Li Fan's primary refinement of the physical body. Boom, boom, dull thuds echoed faintly from within the clone's body. Each time the sound rang out, a strange blood-red color appeared on Li Fan's face. Soon, his body seemed to become a blazing furnace, with the red color spreading all over. The body's temperature rose even higher. It seemed like it was being roasted by flames, reaching its limit, ready to melt completely at any moment. However, each time it reached a critical point, a surge of pure vitality would emerge from inside the body, resolving the fatal injuries. This was not something Li Fan consciously manipulated. It was the body's instinctive reaction in the face of life-threatening crises. Under the continuous forging of these hammering impacts, Li Fan's physical body gradually became stronger. He accumulated quantitative changes. After an unknown amount of time, with a heavier and more muffled thud, Li Fan's body trembled slightly. The intense red color faded. The strength of the body had finally risen to a new level. Activating his spiritual energy and forming a blade, he slashed at his left arm. Ding! Surprisingly, a metallic clash echoed. Li Fan continuously adjusted and increased the intensity of his spiritual energy until he exerted a force equivalent to mid-stage foundation establishment. Only then did a bloody wound finally appear on his arm. The first refinement is finally successful. The step equivalent to foundation establishment has been completed. Next is to mobilize the hidden potential within the body and forge the physical body once again. Then, repeat this process. 1 refinement, 100 refinements, 1,000 refinements. According to expectations, if there is no limit, the hidden potential of the human body is developed to the extreme. By relying solely on the power of the physical body, one could influence and distort the laws with a mere wave of the hand. It's almost to the point of being invulnerable to all laws and indestructible against all calamities. Unfortunately, in the Xuanwang realm, this path is cut off. Perhaps the restrictions in the surrounding subworlds might be weaker. Li Fan took a deep breath, and the wound on his arm disappeared in an instant. But my requirements aren't high. I just need to open a path for the physical body to contend with the Golden Core realm. That will be the next goal for my clone. With a single thought, the hidden potential within his body surged out like a torrent. It washed over and tempered his physical body. After the primary refinement's success, this tempering has become as natural as breathing, an instinct of the body. I don't have to stay in seclusion all the time. I can research methods to increase the efficiency of the forging. Li Fan contemplated in silence. At this moment, a communication talisman sent a prompt. It was Zhao Shuyuan again who had come to share his grievances. Over these years, Li Fan had become accustomed to such complaints. Originally, according to the plan, he should have held the first auction during the 18th year to build momentum for the minor medicine King Cauldron's popularity. However, the sudden outbreak of the war in Tianling province and the unexpected discount event from the Tianshuan mirror forced him to postpone it. As Zhao Shuyuan put it, all the cultivators are buying cultivation techniques, and everyone's turning into paupers. There's no profit to be made anymore. By holding an auction now, I'm afraid we won't even recover our costs. Business at Thousand Mile Hall had also been quite bleak these years. In the words of Li Fan's previous life, it was an economic downturn, and everyone was having a hard time. However, Li Fan believed that with the macroeconomic control of the Tianshuan mirror and the existence of the suspected longevity Immortal who made people forget disasters, cultivators would recover quickly. After responding briefly, Li Fan put away the communication talisman, and the clone once again immersed himself in the study of the human body's hidden potential. While both the main body and the clone were diligently cultivating, on the deserted island, Yi Feipeng became somewhat confused. Over these years, even though he considered himself diligent in cultivation, the gap between reality and ideal was considerable, which left him quite disheartened. According to the history he remembered, shortly after Zhang Haobo reached the false Golden Core realm, he could shepherd a great wind disaster to 10,000 Immortals Island. But Yi Feipeng had only recently broken through to late-stage foundation establishment. The Golden Core realm seemed like an unattainable goal. Could it be that the gap between my talent and true geniuses is truly so great? Not only Zhang Haobo, but each of the people on this deserted island was also a monster. Su Xiaomei gradually matured, and her cultivation speed became faster. Later on, she reached the same level as Yi Feipeng, and they were both in the late-stage foundation establishment. However, with her terrifying talent, she easily defeated Yi Feipeng in actual combat. During their battle, Yi Feipeng could only rely on his increasingly astonishing speed to evade constantly. Xiao Heng was also not weak. Even Su Changyu and the Yin sisters, who cultivated slightly slower, each had their strengths and couldn't be underestimated. In terms of talent, Yi Feipeng was inferior. Although he had a clear understanding of this before, at that time, he still had the foresight of a reborn individual, and his heart was not too anxious. But now, that point of reliance gradually became unreliable. Everything changed because some time ago, he happened to overhear passing cultivators talking about the Tianling province war that happened a few years ago. The more he heard, the more uneasy he felt. Because, in his previous life, such a major event had never occurred. Chapter 250, Feipenga's Calamity. We have an ancient saying in the Dali realm. When the hooves of a marching general's horse lightly step, a mountain fire erupts thousands of miles away. Could it be that one of my unintentional actions caused the future to change drastically? Yi Feipeng furrowed his brow, carefully recalling every detail of his life since rebirth, attempting to find the root of the changes. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't come up with even a vaguely reasonable explanation. After half a day, he finally gave up in frustration. Regardless, the future in my memory has become inaccurate. I can only treat it as a reference and cannot trust it. So, what I should be most concerned about is whether the Crimson Flame will still appear. Will the joint efforts of the soul transformation cultivators to kill Crimson Flame truly unfold as scheduled? The chubby cultivator exerted all his efforts to make a rough deduction. After a while, he reached a conclusion. The Crimson Flame burning the sea should still happen. But in my past life, it was likely that Zhang Haobo informed the 10,000 Immortals Island in advance about this matter. Shepherding wind to 10,000 Immortals Island, facing off against soul transformation cultivators. Yi Feipeng shuddered, his face showing a troubled expression. I can't do it, let me think. At that time, there were only 2 native cultivators from 10,000 Immortals Island who took action, and the rest were temporary forces. If it's only 2 people caught off guard facing the Crimson Flame. The chubby cultivator's face turned pale. It's simply impossible for them to match the Crimson Flame. Doesn't that mean all my calculations are in vain? With an ever-changing expression on his face, after a long time, Yi Feipeng's gaze showed a hint of fierceness. No, I must find a way to publicize the imminent appearance of the Crimson Flame. Even if I make this matter widely known. Suddenly, a thought struck him, and Yi Feipeng quickly shook his head. No, it's too dangerous. If people deduce that I'm the one behind this, my result will be worse than death. After much internal struggle, Yi Feipeng, still feeling helpless, left the deserted island, aimlessly wandering while contemplating a solution. In a trance, he found himself in a distant sea area. A peculiar and magnificent scene awakened him from his contemplation. The sun in the sky had disappeared, replaced by a giant eye suspended in the middle of the sky. The giant eye stared at the ocean below. Everything within its line of sight, sea, islands, living beings, was covered in a silver glow. Under the influence of the silver radiance, all things seemed to be compressed into a flat and illusory picture, following the silver light, flying into the giant eye in the sky. This is. Sweating profusely, Yi Feipeng suddenly woke up. Extracting the essence of heaven and earth. A nascent soul cultivator is ascending to the soul transformation stage. Although this was Yi Feipeng's first time witnessing it in person, the scene in front of him was almost identical to the description in the books. Mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas, everything in the world returned to the Dharma domain. Yi Feipeng held his breath, silently retreating. Cultivators undergoing breakthroughs were extremely sensitive. If the other party mistakenly thought he had ill intentions and casually killed him, it would truly be an unjust death. Secretly praying that the other party wouldn't discover him, Yi Feipeng used his fastest speed to try to get away from this dangerous area. Unfortunately, things didn't go as planned. The giant eye in the sky moved slightly. Its gaze immediately locked onto Yi Feipeng. Yi Feipeng, who was riding the wind and waves, was instantly fixed in place, unable to move. A silver glow enveloped him. The next moment, just as he was about to be compressed and absorbed into the Dharma domain, a deep blue light emerged from his body, dispelling the silver radiance. A figure appeared in front of Yi Feipeng in an instant. Zhang Ziliang. The moment Yi Feipeng saw this person, his mind trembled. Because he knew him, It was the formation master who, several years later, would join several soul transformation cultivators in besieging Crimson Flame. He shouldn't be at the soul transformation stage. How could he be about to break through to soul transformation? Zhang Ziliang slowly extended his hand, capturing a strand of blue light. Silver radiance flashed, and the blue light was subsequently decomposed inch by inch. An earthly treasure. A hint of curiosity flashed in Zhang Ziliang's eyes as he looked at this small foundation establishment cultivator. You seem to know me. Without waiting for Yi Feipeng to respond, Zhang Ziliang's eyes were devoid of the slightest emotion as he pointed a finger toward Yi Feipeng's brow. In Yi Feipeng's pupils, scenes suddenly appeared. A blazing sun rose in the sky, illuminating the heavenly spirit that had just manifested. 5 soul transformation cultivators, as well as Zhang Ziliang, joined forces to fight Crimson Flame. The Kong Yunxi 28 swords, integrating oneself with the Tao as a golden core. ... The giant eye in the sky instantly widened in fury. Although Zhang Ziliang's face showed no expression changes, the slight trembling of his body illustrated the extreme unrest in his heart. What is this? He stared fixedly at the convulsing Yi Feipeng, and pointed again, attempting to extract more information from his mind. At this critical moment, an endless blue light surged from Yi Feipeng's chest, instantly enveloping him. Zhang Ziliang's expression changed. He was about to mobilize the power of his Dharma domain to suppress the blue light. Suddenly, the Kong Yunxi below seemed to violently surge and shake. Waves roared, and a flaw in his control of his Dharma domain appeared. Yi Feipeng was carried away by the blue light, disappearing in an instant and escaping to an unknown destination. Only Zhang Ziliang remained standing there dumbfounded. After a long time, he seemed to wake up from a dream. A reborn person, the heavenly spirit, the heaven's eye Dharma domain disappeared from the sky, and the sun reappeared in the sky. The world returned to normal. However, it seemed as if there was a lingering shadow on Zhang Ziliang's body that couldn't be dispelled. Tao integration, he repeatedly murmured, his eyes shining with an inexplicable brilliance. In the Tianquan mirror, Li Fan, who had been awakened from cultivation and witnessed everything, stroked his chin. He hadn't expected Yi Feipeng, who was wandering around randomly, to encounter Zhang Ziliang in the midst of a breakthrough. The chubby guy was too weak-minded and was detected by Zhang Ziliang. Moreover, the latter used a method similar to soul-searching to unearth secrets from his mind. Fortunately, at the critical moment, the Kanghai Pearl erupted, saving his life. Yi Feipeng seemed to have suffered a tremendous mental shock and fell into a deep sleep. What puzzled Li Fan was that despite this unexpected turn of events, Yi Feipeng's fortune had not suffered any damage. Instead, there was a more mysterious change. Even the current Li Fan couldn't fathom it. Interesting. It seems that the Kanghai Pearl is determined to protect Yi Feipeng. I wonder if there are other hidden secrets on him that I haven't noticed. And how will Zhang Ziliang, who learned about the impending arrival of Crimson Flame in advance and ascended to soul transformation, react? Where will the events of the Crimson Flame of this life lead? It's truly something to look forward to. Li Fan let out a low chuckle. Chapter 251, He Xingxin. The mysterious disappearance of the fatty, Yi Feipeng, caused the residents of the deserted island, who were becoming a bit complacent due to their significant progress in cultivation, to become more reserved. Strictly following the instructions of Senior Skull, they practiced in silence and developed discreetly. On the other hand, things seemed a bit unusual on Zhang Ziliang's side. There was no news of his breakthrough to soul transformation. It was as if nothing had happened, and he was still the same formation master as before. However, Li Fan knew that there must be some conspiracy brewing in the background. Zhang Ziliang's survival in the fierce battle in Tianling province not only led to his breakthrough but also to changes in his entire mentality. Zhang Ziliang himself did not hide this fact too much. Thus, Li Fan, who had previous contact with Zhang Ziliang and was adept at observing words and expressions, was keenly aware of this. In the Tianquan mirror, the cost of materials for making formation crowns had recently experienced a slight increase. This seemed to indirectly confirm that Zhang Ziliang was quietly preparing for something. I remember this year, the 2 soul transformation true monarchs Lankang and Haoshuan will coincidentally break into battle in the Kong Yunxi. Whether true monarch Xian intervenes at that time will determine if Zhang Ziliang has leaked the news of the Crimson Flame. All things are interconnected, and the smallest details can reveal the bigger picture. Although I sit in the Tianquan mirror all day, I can still watch the world through the formless killing intent. By comparing and verifying the details that ordinary people may not notice, I can know the affairs of the world without leaving home. Thinking like this, Li Fan couldn't help but feel a sense of rare joy. But just as he resumed his cultivation not long after, Li Fan's face suddenly changed, and he interrupted his cultivation. He found that the formless killing intent monitoring He Zhenghao had unexpectedly failed. Although the lock was still in place, not only could he not see the situation there, but he also couldn't determine He Zhenghao's specific location. The formless killing intent was a technique that imitated the vision of the heavens, and it used a false heavenly mandate to spy and attack. In all of his reincarnations, its failure was very rare. For example, it failed in the master's cottage when the ox was pulling the cart previously. But that was an ancient and mysterious existence capable of having a showdown with the heavenly doctor, with strength at least above Tao integration. He Zhenghao had not yet broken through to Golden Core. How could he possibly shield Li Fan's formless killing intent? What happened? Li Fan still valued He Zhenghao greatly. As the only subordinate he had taken in this world, Li Fan planned to find an excuse to take him out of the Kong Yun Sea before the Crimson Flame arrived. But the premise was that He Zhenghao couldn't escape from Li Fan's control. After contemplating for a moment, Li Fan took out a communication talisman and sent a message to He Zhenghao. "Fellow Taoist He, how are you doing?" After a long time, there was no response. Li Fan furrowed his brow. "Fellow Taoist He, where are you now?" After waiting for a while, there was still no response. Rubbing his chin, Li Fan stood up and left the Tianshuan mirror, heading straight to the transmission square. As he was about to reach the teleportation array for Luli Island, He Zhenghao finally replied leisurely, "Huh? Why is fellow Taoist Li Fan looking for me? Where else can I be? Of course, I'm on Luli Island." Li Fan's steps paused. "Hee, that's perfect. Long time no see. I'll find you for a chat." He Zhenghao immediately replied to the message, sounding a bit panicked, "How about another day? I have guests visiting, and it's not very convenient." Li Fan smiled faintly, not paying attention to He Zhenghao's suggestion, and directly activated the teleportation array. He wanted to see what means He Zhenghao had used to block the formless killing intent. After a moment, Li Fan saw He Zhenghao with a somewhat embarrassed and regretful expression on his face. However, his attention was now focused on another person present, a young girl who appeared to be only 16 or 17 years old. She had a tall figure and a beautiful face. At this moment, she was assessing Li Fan, her eyes filled with curiosity. This is, Li Fan and the young girl asked simultaneously. He Zhenghao cleared his throat, calmly standing in front of the girl, blocking Li Fan's line of sight. "Haha, fellow Taoist is really a thunderous person who comes when he says. Let me introduce you guys, this is my daughter, He Xingxin. Xingxin, this fellow Taoist is Li Fan, your father's closest friend." He Zhenghao concealed the embarrassment on his face and introduced the two to each other. Li Fan's gaze swept over He Xingxin, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. This young girl, though not very old, seemed to possess remarkable talent, having already reached late-stage foundation establishment at such a young age. According to the normal course of history's development, without Li Fan helping He Zhenghao purchase the mountain and river hidden dragon technique, her cultivation level would probably surpass He Zhenghao. She has higher talent than her father, but they're not living together. In an instant, Li Fan understood. "Fellow Taoist He, it seems you are quite good at living off of others. I wonder why you came to the Kong Yun Sea all alone. Could it be that you've grown old and become useless?" Li Fan speculated maliciously. On the other side, seeing Li Fan staring so intently at his daughter, He Zhenghao couldn't help but feel a bit anxious. He quickly spoke up to divert Li Fan's attention. "Haha, fellow Taoist, please have a seat." In a hurry, he invited Li Fan to sit in the pavilion on the mountaintop. "Fellow Taoist He, you really treat me like an outsider. How come I've never heard you mention having a daughter before?" Li Fan took a sip of tea and asked slowly and deliberately. Sure enough, when Li Fan said this, He Xingxin immediately became somewhat displeased. She didn't say anything, but just stared at He Zhenghao with her beautiful eyes, puffing up her cheeks. He Zhenghao secretly sighed, quickly explaining, "Fellow Taoist really is forgetful. Last time, I did mention that I wanted to introduce my daughter." Speaking halfway, He Zhenghao suddenly felt that something was wrong and quickly stopped. Feeling He Xingxin's suspicious gaze, He Zhenghao's mind went blank. He opened his mouth but couldn't figure out how to explain. Fortunately, Li Fan resolved the situation for him. Now that you mention it, I do remember. At that time, you were even clamoring for me to prepare a gift for her. It's our first meeting, but your father didn't notify me, so I didn't prepare any gifts in advance. Let me give you a little trinket. Saying that, Li Fan took out a flag about half a person's height from his storage ring and handed it over. He Xingxin took the flag and saw that it was black and yellow, with the words, 10,000 Immortals, written on it. It was the 10,000 Immortals formation flags that Li Fan had used before a backup purchased in this life. It was worth 10,000 contribution points. Girls need to be careful when they go out. This set of formation flags is for your self-defense. Understanding the principle of needing to invest before receiving profit, Li Fan, disregarding He Zhenghao's worried eyes, smiled and spoke to He Xingxin. Chapter 252, Genuine Fear. He Xingxin seemed to be discerning. She softly said, "Thank you, uncle," and smiled as she accepted the formation flag. Watching the two, He Zhenghao, who was worried beyond measure, couldn't help but speak, although the gift from fellow Taoist is precious, it might not be very useful for my daughter. If we talk about predicting crises and preserving one's life, my daughter is much stronger than her old father. Li Fan, upon hearing this, flashed a look of interest. Oh, how so? He Zhenghao's face showed a hint of pride. I won't conceal it from fellow Taoist. My daughter has had extraordinary talent in divination since she was young. In recent years, she has also studied related techniques under Ruoshui, alongside her mother. Now she has already achieved some success. Not only can she shield her fate from heaven's will, preventing others from deducing and plotting against her, but she can also faintly predict future events, turning misfortune into opportunity. Li Fan re-evaluated He Xingxin, who appeared delicate and gentle. He thought, could that be why the surveillance function of the formless killing intent failed? It seems that He Zhenghao wasn't exaggerating, this method is indeed extraordinary. I wonder which cultivation technique she practices. However, the technique practiced by a cultivator in this world was a highly private matter, and Li Fan wouldn't casually inquire. He just cooperated with He Zhenghao's words, looking surprised and incredulous. I've heard that fate is always elusive, and I never thought that someone could predict it. Is it really so miraculous? That's right, the accuracy is quite high. He Zhenghao paused and continued, however, there are times when the predictions go wrong. He turned to look at He Xingxin and smiled, saying, before, when the girl was practicing, she sensed that I would die soon. So she was extremely anxious, traveling a long distance to the Kongyun Sea to warn me. I stay in this mountain river star formation all day, cultivating intensely. How could there be a risk of dying? He Zhenghao laughed, not taking it seriously. On the side, He Xingxin frowned and softly said, this matter is strange. My previous intuition was definitely not wrong. But after I came, I did another calculation for you, Dad. The fatal crisis inexplicably disappeared. Her eyes were full of doubt and regret. I don't know why this happened. If Mom didn't stop me and I could have come earlier, I might have been able to figure out why fate changed. He Zhenghao patted his daughter's head, comforting her. Changes in fate are unpredictable, and cultivators cannot know everything. It must be that you made a mistake, Xingxin. At this moment, Li Fan spoke up in praise. Even if there are occasional mistakes, this method is extraordinary. To predict the future, how many opportunities can one gain? I wonder, Xingxin, can you calculate my future and see what my fate is? Li Fan asked with a smile. The reason he did this was to see how far the divination techniques in this world could reach. Could they reveal that he came from a land of immortal extinction, or that he actually transmigrated? Could they even predict the existence of truth? If this foundation establishment girl could sense some clues, Li Fan would have to be more careful in his actions in the future. Otherwise, falling into the eyes of powerful cultivators might lead to the revelation of his true origin, which would be very unfavorable. He Zhenghao also intended to let his daughter show her skills in front of Li Fan, so he didn't stop her. Instead, he encouraged her with his eyes. Since that's the case, let me calculate for you. He Xingxin said softly, then a golden purple compass appeared out of thin air. The compass pointer pointed towards Li Fan on one end and towards He Xingxin on the other. She chanted words, and then the pointer rapidly started spinning. Li Fan's shrunken figure appeared above the compass. Characters floated out of the compass, revolving around the miniature image. As the pointer spun faster, some characters gradually dimmed and disappeared, while others became brighter, emitting a purple-golden light. Unlike ordinary text, each character seemed to be a composite of many meanings. He Xingxin's divination of Li Fan's future seemed to be hidden within the arrangement of these characters. Li Fan estimated roughly that there were at least tens of thousands of these purple-golden characters. He Xingxin seemed to be struggling, with beads of sweat continuously dripping from her forehead. After a while, the purple-gold characters suddenly scattered and returned to the compass. Li Fan's virtual image became somewhat more substantial. He Xingxin's breathing became somewhat rapid. After calming down a bit, she continued to focus on Li Fan's virtual image for the final calculation. Uncle, have you ever been to Yuandao province? After a while, she suddenly asked a seemingly inexplicable question. Li Fan was slightly surprised, and before he could answer, He Zhenghao preemptively said, fellow Taoist Li Fan was a wandering cultivator in Yuandao province before. He came to the Kongyun Sea seeking breakthrough opportunities. Why, Xingxin, is there something you want to ask? He Zhenghao noticed that his daughter's expression was often quickly asked. Being a wandering cultivator in Yuandao province was a background that Li Fan casually fabricated when he first met He Zhenghao. But, Xingxin had clearly seen something else. Li Fan was very clear that in this life, he had never been to Yuandao province. Why would this girl ask about Yuandao province? Li Fan's gaze flickered as he stared at He Xingxin, awaiting her explanation. He Xingxin opened her mouth but hesitated. Xingxin, feel free to speak. Li Fan smiled. With a hint of apology on her face, He Xingxin said, Uncle, forgive me, it's not that I'm unwilling to speak. It's just that I really don't know how to interpret this Dao Seal Eclipse character. Li Fan raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? He Xingxin hesitated for a moment, then used her hand to draw a picture in the air. The figure in the drawing naturally resembled Li Fan. There seemed to be something on his back. As the picture kept changing, that invisible presence took a fierce bite at Li Fan. Li Fan seemed to be completely unaware, calmly walking away. The thing on his back disappeared along with him. The drawing disappeared. He Xingxin frowned and said, according to the explanation of the Dao scriptures, it seems that something attacked Uncle in Yuandao province. Uncle wasn't injured, nor was his life in danger. But on the contrary, the Dao Seal Eclipse character depicts an extremely dangerous situation. It's self-contradictory. That's why I don't know how to interpret it. He Zhenghao chuckled when he heard this. Daughter, could it be that you made another mistake? You predict extreme danger, and you also predicted extreme danger for me earlier. But fellow Taoist Li Fan is living quite well now, isn't he? Li Fan's heart sank. Yuandao province. A blue crystal flashed in his mind. All the experiences in Yuandao province began to replay in his mind. Once, no abnormality was found. 2 times, still nothing. Through the divine transformation Dao secret technique, Li Fan repeatedly reviewed his past experiences. Finally, he sensed an abnormality. A chill rose from behind him, making him feel like he was in the midst of a harsh winter. Even when he narrowly escaped death at the hands of the heavenly doctor, he had never felt so frightened before. This was the first genuine fear that Li Fan felt since he transmigrated. In his 12th life, in the 29th year, he established Mingyu Palace. Then he immersed himself in closed-door cultivation, studying Zhang Ziliang's infinite formation. Chu Xingyang's marriage snatching and the subsequent successful development of the breakthrough loaning project unfolded in an orderly manner afterwards. This should have happened in the same year. The conclusion obtained by retracing the past through the blue crystal was the same. But in reality, Chu Xingyang's forced marriage and the initial success of the breakthrough loaning project actually took place in the 39th year. Where did those 10 years go? Chapter 253, The Missing 10 Years. Every time Li Fan woke up from seclusion, he would glance at the truth panel and calculate the time based on his physiological age. The first year after the anchor point was equivalent to 20 years of age, and so on. In the 12th life, he had also checked the truth panel multiple times. However, when the time suddenly jumped from 29 years to 39 years, Li Fan didn't notice any abnormalities. Even when he repeatedly looked back at the experiences of his 12th life, he failed to notice the missing 10 years. Part of the reason for this was a fixed mindset. After all, in the cognition of the vast majority of people, time is continuous and indivisible. How could one second be the 29th year, and the next second be the 39th year? Another more important reason was that there was something that distorted his perception, causing him to inadvertently overlook this fact. What exactly was going on? Who stole my time? Li Fan couldn't help but fall into deep fear. Fear of the unknown. The heavenly doctor was formidable, but at least there was a specific goal. In this life, Li Fan was not his opponent, but after 10 or 100 cycles, Li Fan would eventually grow to a height similar to his. Eventually, he would be defeated. But this unknown entity made Li Fan feel powerless for the first time. He didn't even know what it was or how it stole the time that originally belonged to him. What made Li Fan even more fearful was that the influences it exerted persisted even after regressing, meaning that it was very likely to be something in the same realm as truth. At the very least, the power of the other opponent was already very close to return to truth. This was the true source of Li Fan's fear. Truth had always been Li Fan's hope for longevity. Regardless of how powerful the enemy he faced, he could face it with calm confidence. No matter how great the crisis, he could silently recite truth. Through the transformation of reality into illusion, everything returned to the anchor point. The crisis would naturally disappear. But now, the absolute dominance of truth was being threatened. He Zhenghao and his daughter He Xingxin noticed that Li Fan's expression was off. Just as He Xingxin was about to ask, she was held back by He Zhenghao, who shook his head. Fear lingered in Li Fan's heart for a long time. Fortunately, Li Fan's willpower was strong. Having experienced too many near-death situations, he gradually calmed the fear in his heart. Upon careful analysis, he soon noticed an anomaly in this event. Adjusting his expression, Li Fan asked He Zhenghao, "Fellow Taoist He, I'm curious about the origin of Xingxin's divination technique. Could you give me a hint?" Although he said it was an inquiry, his eyes carried an unyielding meaning that could not be refused. After hesitating for a while, He Zhenghao had to explain, "My daughter's divination technique is called the Tao Web Heaven Net. It is a customized divination technique based on her companion treasure, the Tao character compass. In terms of quality, it can barely be considered half of a celestial treasure." Having said this, He Zhenghao's face couldn't help but show a bit of pride. Companion treasure. Li Fan's mind stirred. In the Treatise on Heavenly Treasures, there were relevant records. Some cultivators were born with heavenly treasures accompanying them in their bodies. These items had their own extraordinary features and were perfectly compatible with the cultivator. However, such cases were extremely rare, and the book only briefly mentioned them without delving into much detail. Those with a companion treasure would be nurtured by the laws of heavenly treasures from birth and tended to cultivate at an astonishing speed. Those who could safely survive and grow up were, without exception, outstanding talents. Unexpectedly, He Xingxin belonged to this category. No wonder she had already reached the foundation establishment stage at such a young age. Li Fan looked at the young girl and thought to himself. Being stared at by Li Fan, He Xingxin inexplicably felt a surge of nervousness. "Xingxin, explain to Uncle Li the derivation principle of the Tao Web Heaven Net," He Zhenghao spoke up. He Xingxin nodded and, trusting her father, did not have much guard up. She began to explain to Li Fan in a soft voice. All life that exists between heaven and earth lives in a giant web. Every action has an impact on the surrounding people, animals, and objects. Those who do not transcend are inevitably influenced by others in the same way. Everything is intertwined and interacts, forming various phenomena in the world. Every event, once it happens, leaves a trace. Observing these traces on the giant web allows one to understand everything in the world. This web is called the Tao Web Heaven Net. The traces are referred to as Tao Seal Eclipse characters. As the young girl spoke, Li Fan's doubts were gradually dispelled. The incident of losing 10 years of time happened in the 12th life. He Xingxin was only at the foundation establishment stage, and no matter how talented she was, she couldn't possibly penetrate truth and deduce events that occurred nearly 100 lifetimes ago. Furthermore, the unknown entity that stole 10 years of his time had an extremely high status, and logically, it was not something He Xingxin could deduce. However, she saw through it. This was because an apple that had been bitten was different from a whole apple. Similarly, a creature that had its time stolen by this inexplicable existence undoubtedly differed from other normal beings, tainted with a unique aura. Even though Li Fan returned to the time before the theft through truth, he couldn't completely shake off its influence. The fact that Li Fan had been unaware of this before served as evidence. He Xingxin's Tao Web Heaven Net did not directly calculate truth and the unknown entity that stole time. Still, by deducing Li Fan, she sensed its influence and could reconstruct what happened to Li Fan. Li Fan even speculated that if He Xingxin were to deduce any cultivator in Yuandao province, she wouldn't be able to predict the same results as with him. It wasn't something a foundation establishment cultivator could perceive. Even with the celestial treasure, the Tao character compass, as a foundation, it was not enough. If one had to make a comparison, the unknown entity that stole time was like a black hole. It silently spanned the sky above Yuandao province. Every so often, it devoured 10 years of time from the entire province. Under normal circumstances, its existence could not be directly discovered through ordinary observation or deduction methods. However, because of truth, Li Fan escaped from this black hole. However, the influence of the black hole did not disappear. So, Li Fan was like the distorted light around a black hole. With his help, it was possible to deduce that the unknown existence was stealing time in Yuandao province. Chapter 254, Ruoshui and Zhenghao. Li Fan's thoughts turned rapidly, and he instantly understood the origin of the extreme danger in He Xingxin's calculation. It was the same as the flaw revealed by the previous clone when facing the Heavenly Doctor. In this world, if the events predicted by He Xingxin didn't occur, according to Li Fan's original plan, he would still be heading to Yuandao province. In the 29th year, it would likely devour the time of the Yuandao province again. However, on Li Fan, there already exists traces of his time being stolen. But it can be sure that it did not steal Li Fan's time before. This unknown terrifying existence could surely think of the most likely reason for this to occur. Facing the Heavenly Doctor, Li Fan could still activate truth. But facing this monster that could devour others' time, Li Fan wouldn't even have the chance to silently activate truth. The reason why it was extreme danger and not certain death was perhaps because the only chance lies in the proactive protection of truth, which can awaken Li Fan's consciousness and resist for a moment, allowing him to activate truth. At this point, Li Fan has a basic guess about the missing 10 years. In Li Fan's view, this may also be the closest guess to the truth. As for other possibilities, if it was just the inability to perceive the stolen 10 years in one lifetime, and he realized immediately after reviewing the events of the previous life after truth, then Li Fan would suspect whether it was the blue feather immortal sages devouring rebirth formation that caused the issue. However, it could affect truth, making Li Fan unable to perceive it at all. Until being reminded by someone, and after searching for a long time. It's not that Li Fan looks down on Blue Feather, but with his quasi-Dao integration strength, he may not be qualified. This world is full of wonders and dangers. A slight mistake, one wrong move, and it's over. It's because I have truth that in front of the top powers in this realm, it's even more dangerous for me. The only good news is that its influence seems to be limited to Yuandao province. And it doesn't proactively attack, it only steals time. In the 10th life, when I first entered the immortal cultivation world, I transformed into the Kong Yun Si and lived until the 48th year. There was no occurrence of time theft. It seems that I can't go to Yuandao province in the future. Also, I need to find a way to clear its influence on me. Otherwise, it's like a ticking time bomb, a future hazard. People are like this. When facing the unknown, the heart trembles and one cannot control oneself. But once the danger is even slightly understood, the fear will naturally diminish. And as understanding deepens, the fear will gradually dissipate. Although Li Fan currently doesn't know what it is, he might as well regard it as a top powerhouse residing in Yuandao province that was capable of devouring the time of living beings. Can't afford to provoke it, so just avoid it. At the very least, from the current situation, truth should be more powerful than it. As long as he doesn't run into it again, there shouldn't be a big problem. It's also because I, Li Fan, was not destined to die. Before going to Yuandao province, I encountered He Xingxin and resolved the disaster. Speaking of which, fellow Taoist, he is truly my lucky star. If it weren't for the sudden failure of the formless killing intent on him, I wouldn't have impulsively come to Luli Island to investigate. Thinking of this, Li Fan showed a rare gentle smile. Seeing this, He Zhenghao's heart suddenly tightened, and he quickly asked, "Fellow Taoist Li Fan, are you okay?" Li Fan patted his shoulder. "It's okay, it's just a small matter. Thanks to fellow Taoist's assistance, I've already figured out a way to resolve it. Speaking of which, I really have to thank Xingxin. If it weren't for her reminder, I really don't know what would have happened." He Xingxin was praised, blushing immediately, looking a bit embarrassed. He Zhenghao, on the other hand, laughed heartily, very happy. Xingxin, how long do you plan to stay here? Li Fan knew that He Xingxin must have sneaked out and couldn't stay with He Zhenghao all the time, so he asked. Whenever my mother finds out, I'll go back. He Xingxin said halfway, then realized something. Sticking out her tongue, she looked at the somewhat awkward He Zhenghao, lowered her head, and said no more. He Zhenghao pushed her aside and began telling Li Fan about his relationship with He Xingxin's mother. It was a third-rate love story at best. He Xingxin's mother was named Heng Ruoshui. She hailed from Tianyu province. In her youth, she traveled outside secretly without her parents' knowledge and met He Zhenghao. At that time, He Zhenghao was quite handsome. Heng Ruoshui had very little contact with other males. Being together day and night, they naturally developed feelings for each other. Just when the couple was deeply in love, Heng Ruoshui's parents suddenly appeared. After carefully observing He Zhenghao, they didn't immediately oppose the relationship. Instead, they brought the two back to Tianyu province. In the following period, numerous young talents continuously appeared, pursuing Heng Ruoshui. In terms of appearance, each of them had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes, handsome and extraordinary. In terms of cultivation, they were mostly in the golden core and nascent soul realms. Foundation establishment cultivators couldn't even get close to Heng Ruoshui. At that time, He Zhenghao was only in the late qi condensation stage. In front of cultivators 2 major realms higher than himself, he didn't even dare to breathe. Heng Ruoshui still had some feelings for He Zhenghao. Facing these cultivators much more outstanding than He Zhenghao, she didn't have any romantic interest. But she couldn't stand He Zhenghao's pitiful appearance and criticized him verbally. At that time, young and impulsive, He Zhenghao, fueled by pride, had a big argument with Heng Ruoshui. He even made arrogant remarks about achieving nascent soul cultivation and making a name for himself. This was to impress Heng Ruoshui. Soon after, he ran away. Young He Zhenghao, in the following years, experienced a series of hardships in life. After great efforts and hardships, he finally cultivated to the foundation establishment stage. He participated in the once-in-10-year assessment of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, preparing to join the law enforcement hall and become a law enforcer. Who would have thought that after the assessment results came out, he did pass. But the position was not a law enforcer, but a guardian position. What's even more absurd was that the stationed area was not Tianyu province but a remote and previously unheard of place called the Kongyunsi. Originally, He Zhenghao wanted to refuse, but the appointment order had already been issued at lightning speed. With the order in hand, He Zhenghao didn't dare to defy the 10,000 Immortals Alliance's command. Even if he knew there were many tricks behind this, and it must be Heng Ruoshui's parents' secret manipulations. But he could only reluctantly go to take up his post in Kongyunsi. This stay lasted for decades. Both his love life and career were in decline, and He Zhenghao lost all his ambitions. His cultivation stagnated, and he was stuck at mid-stage foundation establishment. On the contrary, he became engrossed in formations and made quite a name for himself in the field, making many friends. However, the mistake was made. During a casual conversation with a friend, He Zhenghao accidentally found out that Heng Ruoshui was actually pregnant. However, knowing that her parents would strongly oppose the birth, she used a secret technique to temporarily halt the fetus's growth. From then on, she secluded herself, diligently cultivating. Until eventually, more than a decade ago, she became a nascent soul master pathweaver, gaining enough influence in front of her parents. Only then did she reveal the truth, give birth to the child, and name her He Xingxin. This matter caused quite a stir in Tianyu province and spread widely. People at that time regarded Heng Ruoshui as an extraordinary woman. Many cultivators were not bothered by her having a child and vigorously pursued her. Yet, she rejected them all without exception. In the faraway Kongyunsi, when He Zhenghao heard about this, he felt like he was struck by lightning. Tears streamed down his face, and he regretted his past but had no way to change it. He didn't have the face and courage to meet Heng Ruoshui again. Until He Xingxin sensed her biological father's life-threatening crisis and came to this remote Kongyunsi. After He Zhenghao's narration, tears shimmered in his eyes, and he exhaled deep sighs. After hearing the story, Li Fan couldn't help but silently curse, "He Zhenghao, what kind of man are you?" But he patted He Zhenghao on the shoulder and made a bold promise, "Fellow Taoist He, rest assured, one day, I'll make sure you return to glory in Tianyu province and make up for everything. 100 years may be an eternity for ordinary people, and regrets may seem irreparable. But for cultivators like us, it's not something that cannot be undone. Chapter 255, Yuandao Province's Origins. He Zhenghao was no longer the arrogant and hot-blooded youth of the past. After struggling in the Kongyun Sea for decades, he had long recognized the cruelty of reality. With a deep sigh, He Zhenghao shook his head. Fellow Taoist, you're joking. Ruoshui's cultivation talent far surpasses mine. Even if I can cultivate to the nascent soul realm in this lifetime, by then, she might have already ascended to the soul transformation realm. A soul transformation master pathweaver. The gap between us would only widen. I'm already old, and I don't dare to hope anymore. As long as Xingxin can visit me from time to time, I'll be content. He Zhenghao expressed his sentiments. Li Fan didn't say much and just patted his shoulder before taking his leave. Back in the Tianquan mirror, Li Fan began a meticulous search for information about Yuandao province. People from the entire province would lose 10 years of time every now and then. Perhaps the people in Yuandao province couldn't perceive it. But when exchanging information with cultivators from other provinces, wouldn't they realize that something was amiss? During these 10 swallowed years, how would the outside world perceive Yuandao province? The information in the Tianquan mirror was vast, and there should be some clues about this aspect, right? Li Fan spent a good part of the day confirming this. Nothing. Li Fan couldn't help but sigh. Everything you can see is what they allow you to see. What they don't want you to see, you will never see. Shaking his head, he gave up on his previous plans. He focused on searching for the history of Yuandao province. The ruins of Tiandu, discussion on Yuandao, origin of Yuandao, on the relationship between Yuandao province and the ancient land of Yuandao, a brief discussion on the inheritance of the Tiandu Grand Master. Book after book, Li Fan patiently read through them. In these books about Yuandao province, almost all of them couldn't avoid a key term. Tiandu, the origin of the Tao, the head of all teachings. What grandiose praise! Li Fan couldn't help but mutter, could it be that Tiandu is one of the 10 great immortal sects? According to testimonies, in ancient times, Tiandu reigned high above the 9 heavens, overlooking the multitudes of the Xuanwang realm. It was known as the origin of the Tao and the head of all teachings. The specific cultivators inside Tiandu at that time are no longer known. The only name passed down was the Tiandu Grand Master. It is said that Yuandao province's blue feather immortal sage was from the lineage of the Tiandu Grand Master. The heavenly feather transformation technique he practiced was directly passed down by the Grand Master. Many of Blue Feather's precious treasures, such as the Tiandu martial arena and the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace, all came from the Tiandu inheritance. This year, Blue Feather's life will come to an end. Before his death, he laid down the devouring rebirth formation, in a vain attempt to reverse the cycle of life and death and achieve eternal life. It is said that when Blue Feather died, death announcements were widespread throughout the province, visible to everyone. My main body cannot go, but my clone can go. Li Fan faintly felt that the unknown entity devouring time might be related to the ancient Tiandu. But this was just a hunch and had no evidence to support it. Regardless, witnessing the scene of an immortal sage's death is a rare opportunity. Going to see the world is also good. I heard that because Blue Feather was already a Tao integration cultivator before the Great Calamity, his death announcement is different from those of today's cultivators. With a determined heart, Li Fan then searched for methods to eliminate the inexplicable traces on his body. There were many specialty techniques in the world. Although truth was unable to erase these traces, that didn't mean there weren't other techniques that could. As long as it could be solved with contribution points, it was not a problem for Li Fan. Keywords: purification, curse, traces, elimination. Li Fan carefully examined the information that emerged. All these solutions could be roughly divided into 3 categories. The first category relied on earthly treasures to cleanse oneself, purifying any demonic aura. The second category involved special cultivation techniques that could continuously refine both body and mind until they were pure and flawless. The third category consisted of cultivators who specialize in this field. You only needed to pay a certain price, and they would actively come to cleanse your body. They would eliminate the abnormalities on your body. Of course, if unsuccessful, they wouldn't charge you. With the mindset of giving it a try, Li Fan contacted these cultivators. When the cultivators inquired about the type of traces that needed to be expelled, Li Fan only said he wasn't sure. He just felt something was wrong with his body based on his spiritual consciousness. This kind of intuition was quite normal. Over a dozen cultivators came, some in the Golden Core realm, some in the Nascent Soul realm. After they performed their techniques, Li Fan didn't feel any effect. The cultivators stared at Li Fan for a moment, then shook their heads, indicating they couldn't find any abnormalities. Just as Li Fan was about to give up, the last cultivator gave him a pleasant surprise. This cultivator's name was Fang Yong, and he was in the Nascent Soul realm. After seeing Li Fan and observing for a while, he was about to use his technique. However, his expression suddenly changed. Without saying a word, he turned and left. Li Fan knew Fang Yong must have sensed something and quickly caught up. In front of the transmission square, Fang Yong, who was blocked, had an ugly expression. If it weren't for the prohibition against fighting on the island, he would probably have killed this ignorant kid on the spot. Young man, go back. I'm afraid I can't help with the problem on your body. Li Fan looked nervous and said sincerely, please, senior, save me. I don't know why, but I always feel uneasy lately, and I can't concentrate on cultivation. If this continues, my cultivation will stagnate, and I'll die in the foundation establishment stage, cutting off my path to immortality. Grabbing Fang Yang's hand tightly, Li Fan looked determined not to let go. Fang Yang's face turned red, but he couldn't attack. He could only lower his voice and say, kid, I'll be honest with you. Although I don't know what's happening on your body, it's clear that you've offended an existence you shouldn't have. The level is too high, beyond what a mere nascent soul cultivator like me can handle. Even if I had a solution, I wouldn't help you. Because, to put it bluntly, the anomaly on your body is like a mark left by that existence. If you rashly remove it, it will surely attract the attention of that entity. Fang Yong stopped speaking here and said no more. Li Fan's heart sank. He didn't expect the situation to be more severe than he had imagined. Senior, do you have a solution? If I can get through this disaster, I will repay you generously in the future. Li Fan said solemnly. Fang Yong reevaluated Li Fan, contemplated for a moment, and then replied, find a remote subworld, cultivate a purifying technique, spend more than a decade on it, and maybe you can get rid of it. Of course, this is just a suggestion. Whether it works or not depends on your own destiny, and I don't dare to guarantee it. Li Fan nodded slowly upon hearing this. He expressed his gratitude to Fang Yong and didn't pester him any longer. Chapter 256, Faipenga's Dual Foundation Treasure. TN. I won't be able to post a chapter tomorrow, so this is tomorrow's chapter in advance. ****************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************ux. Li Fan, on the other hand, returned to the Tianquan mirror, paying no attention to the curious gazes of others. Purifying technique. Indeed, there were such types of techniques within the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Generally, these were practiced by cultivators who needed to maintain a clear state of mind for their other cultivation methods. However, these techniques did not significantly enhance one's cultivation level or combat power, making them less popular and relatively inexpensive. Li Fan started searching for a suitable one for himself. Suddenly, his gaze stopped on a technique named Purple Heaven True Thunder Purification. Purple Heaven True Thunder purifies all things and dispels evil easily. Once again, the mention of Purple Heaven and Thunder. It was hard for Li Fan not to connect it with the Purple Heaven sect's Purple Heaven Royal Thunder technique from the fallen immortal realm. This technique cost a little over 40,000 contribution points, and without hesitation, Li Fan purchased it. After reading through it, he compared it with the Purple Heaven Soul Observation technique he had already mastered. There were indeed similarities, but it was clear that Purple Heaven True Thunder Purification was not as profound as the Purple Heaven Royal Thunder technique. At best, it could be considered a weakened version. After all, Zhang Qinmo's methods involve the Purple Heaven Royal Thunder, which seems more advanced than the Purple Heaven True Thunder. To eliminate the hidden danger, maybe I should employ multiple methods. In an ideal scenario, I would purchase heavenly treasures from the Tianquan mirror, and in conjunction with the methods of the Purple Heaven sect, I would cultivate on Grand Zon's Dissociation Mountain for some time. Heavenly treasures are not a problem, there's no shortage of contribution points. However, Zhang Qinmo's undefeated streak remains unbreakable. Thinking about this, Li Fan felt somewhat helpless. Things need to be taken step by step. If it comes to it, once I break through to the Golden Core realm, I'll forcefully capture him and see if I can obtain the Purple Heaven Royal Thunder technique. I can't rest easy until the hidden danger is removed. Before that, it's better to be cautious and lie low within the Tianshuan mirror. Sighing quietly, Li Fan prepared for his future retreat while practicing. With the Crimson Flame's incineration of the sea, he definitely had to flee the Kongyun Sea. He couldn't go to Yuandao province, and Jushan province was too chaotic. The Kongyun Sea only bordered 3 provinces, so the remaining Shilan province became the most suitable place to flee to. Li Fan began to silently collect information about Shilan province in the Tianshuan mirror. The 21st year arrived shortly after Li Fan went into closed-door cultivation. Lankang and Haoshuan, the 2 soul transformation true monarchs, erupted into a fierce battle as expected, on the outskirts of the Kongyun Sea. The sky tore apart, and a beam of starlight descended, teleporting them away. It seems Zhang Ziliang has indeed taken action. Upon hearing this news, Li Fan's clone, who had recently hidden himself, stopped practicing the Creation Forge art. He headed to Yuandao province alone, preparing to witness the scene of Blue Feather's fall. To avoid any troubles, his clone remained focused and went directly to Zhouling City after arriving in the Yuandao province. He found a residence, tightly locked his doors, and practiced diligently while waiting. Half a month later, while he was mobilizing his body's hidden potential to temper his physical body, Li Fan suddenly felt a palpitation in his heart. An indescribable sorrow, accompanied by the continuous cries of alarm within the city, surfaced in his mind. Li Fan touched his cheek and found tears uncontrollably streaming down his face. Slowly stepping outside, he looked up at the vast sky. On the vast sky, a young Taoist child in a blue Taoist robe was overlooking the land below with a smile. The Taoist boy gradually matured into an adult, and then slowly aged. In the end, the image of the Blue Feather Immortal Sage, who had ruled the Yuandao province for over 3,000 years, appeared before everyone. Afterward, it withered like autumn leaves. Heavy rain started pouring from the sky. Beasts howled on the earth. Countless mortals couldn't help but weep. What is this? Li Fan stood in the rain, letting it drench his body. He comprehended the emotions of the beings in heaven and earth. Or rather, they were the emotions that the beings infected by the will of heaven and earth passively produced. The heavens are grieving. What's there to be sad about? Just the fall of Blue Feather, a Tao integration cultivator. Li Fan shook his head inwardly. No, that's not it. After Zhang Haobo achieved Tao integration, he was killed by ink death. At that time, heaven and earth were joyful. Fortunately, he was executed by the heavenly spirit ink death. Li Fan stared at the lingering anomaly in the sky, suddenly feeling as if he had gained some insight. The sorrow lies in the departure of one of the only remaining old law cultivators from this world. Perhaps, what's even more sorrowful is, this cultivator, who has lived for countless years, created the foundation of his cultivation with old law, as a Tao integration immortal sage. He must have been a faithful follower of the old law. But in his final moments, in pursuit of longevity, he decided to defy the principles of heaven and earth. Another cultivator who survived for thousands of years has joined the opposite side. The immortal ancestor is indeed domineering. Li Fan stood beneath the anomaly in the sky, motionless. He carefully pondered, until a long time later, the anomaly dispersed. The sky returned to calm, and a surge of heat emanated from Li Fan's body, instantly evaporating the rainwater on him. With one last glance at the sky, he quietly returned to the Kongyun Sea. Li Fan's main body and clone secluded themselves, paying no attention to worldly affairs. However, the world would not stand still, and it continued to move forward. After being heavily injured by Zhang Ziliang, Yi Feipeng was enveloped by the Kanghai Pearl and sank into the depths of the sea. Whenever a green wind descended, heralding the imminent arrival of a wind disaster, Yi Feipeng would suddenly open his eyes. His eyes were hollow, devoid of vitality, but it didn't hinder his movement. Surrounded by blue light, he arrived at the location where the wind disaster was brewing. His large mouth opened wide, similar to the first time he devoured the green radiance. He swallowed the energy brewing in the wind disaster. The wind disaster dissipated invisibly, and Yi Feipeng, as if satisfied, returned to the seabed to continue his slumber. The handle of the heavenly calamity sword had already escaped from the green wind's prison with a desperate strike on the 20th year. It had disappeared, and the green wind had disappeared with it. The scattered green radiance formed the last wind disasters of the Kongyun Sea, and would normally persist until around the 24th year before completely dissipating. However, Due to Yi Feipeng's unconscious continuous consumption, by the 22nd year, the wind disasters that had been ravaging the Kongyun Sea had completely disappeared. Yi Feipeng, who had swallowed all the green wind energy, now had an aura intensity that far exceeded an ordinary foundation establishment cultivator. However, it seemed there was no bottleneck to his strength. Although he had not advanced to the Golden Core realm, his strength continued to rise. Through the vision of heaven and earth, Li Fan could see even more clearly. A monstrous shadow resembling both a whale and a rock would occasionally appear behind him. It emitted ancient and melodious cries. Is this the reason you want to save Yi Feipeng? For this, you even gave up the chance for the other half to escape. You're so confident in him. This was a treatment that even Zhang Haobo in the previous life did not receive from the Kongyun Sea. Li Fan stared fixedly at Yi Feipeng. In his dantian, besides the previous foundation built by the green wind true intent, there was another familiar blue bead, quietly sinking within the green wind. The blue light in Yi Feipeng's chest had merged with the heavenly treasure, the Kanghai Pearl. Building two foundations with two heavenly treasures. What's going on here? Chapter 257, Cultivator establishes Dao anew. Li Fan did not care much about the fact that Yi Feipeng likely had a spiritual beast bloodline inheritance in his body. Because this also belonged to a type of talent, Li Fan couldn't take any reference from it. However, he became interested in Yi Feipeng's dual foundation treasure in his dantian. Li Fan could be considered as half a true foundation establishment grandmaster, yet he had never heard of a cultivator being able to establish a second foundation using another heavenly treasure after the initial foundation establishment. How did Yi Feipeng achieve this? Was it related to his unique bloodline? Observing through the vision of heaven and earth, Li Fan carefully observed the peacefully sleeping Yi Feipeng. The Green Wind True Intent Foundation treasure and the Kanghai Pearl Foundation treasure coexisted peacefully in the body of the fatty. They were completely harmonious. Even after watching for a long time, Li Fan couldn't figure out the underlying principles. Out of habit, he searched in the Tianshuan mirror. As expected, he found no relevant information. However, this result only strengthened Li Fan's belief that there might indeed be a method to establish dual foundation treasures. Perhaps the secrecy level was extremely high, otherwise, it wouldn't be so bad that there wouldn't even be a single word of discussion about it. Dual foundation treasures. Could there be multiple foundations? Li Fan's interest in this matter was not because he desired to establish a second foundation using other heavenly treasures. Truth could transform into all the heavenly treasures in the world. If there was a rare and extraordinary heavenly treasure that Li Fan wanted to make his own, he could directly absorb it and then transform it with truth. No need for unnecessary steps. What Li Fan truly desired was a method for two or even more foundation treasures to coexist in his body. Currently, when truth transformed into a heavenly treasure, it could only display one at a time. Whether it was the Kanghai Pearl or the 7-aperture exquisite heart, truth could only change sequentially, simultaneous coexistence was impossible. If truth could transform into two or more heavenly treasures simultaneously. Aside from the many other possibilities, his combat power would have a significant leap at the very least. Unable to find results through searching, Li Fan began to leverage his personal connections. Li Fan messaged his friends inquiring about the matter of dual foundation treasures. He expected it to take a long time to get answers, but surprisingly, replies came quickly. It was the oracle from Tianyan province, whom he got to know through Ling Xiao's legacy. Is Junior inquiring about dual foundation treasures because you found some high-grade heavenly treasure and want to establish a new foundation? Seeing that the oracle was clearly well informed, Li Fan replied promptly, Senior, you misunderstood. I just happened to see a cultivator with a dual foundation treasure and asked out of curiosity. The oracle remained silent for a moment before saying, I see. I still owe Junior a favor. The matter of dual foundation treasures is not a top secret, so I can tell you. But Junior, keep it to yourself. Don't spread it unnecessarily to avoid trouble. Li Fan immediately responded, Junior understands. The oracle then said, how much does Junior know about heavenly treasures? A little. They are divided into human treasure, earthly treasure, and celestial treasure. Human treasures seem to be formed by the transformation of cultivators who died thousands of years ago. Li Fan explained some basic knowledge. Correct. Cultivators use heavenly treasures to establish foundation treasures. Subsequently, the condensation of the golden core, the formation of the nascent soul, and even the transformation of the soul are closely related to one's foundation treasure. But the quality of heavenly treasures varies. If a cultivator begins foundation establishment during a period of hardship and poverty, they might have to choose a middle or even low-grade human treasure to establish their foundation. Let's say that later, through a fortuitous encounter, fate turned around for them, and they continued to cultivate until reaching the soul transformation realm. Their low-quality foundation treasure became incompatible with their powerful cultivation. It became a flaw in their cultivation. What should one do in such a situation? Shatter the foundation treasure and rebuild it. With the Tai Shang primordial scripture, one can preserve the majority of their cultivation. However, the higher the cultivation level, the more time is needed for recultivation. Furthermore, the longer one has cultivated, the more firmly rooted the foundation treasure becomes. Recklessly shattering the foundation treasure can also pose a life-threatening danger. Hearing this, Li Fan pondered, so, is this method of establishing a new foundation used by high-level cultivators to eliminate the flaws in their foundation? The oracle nodded. This method is called, establish Tao anew. After establishing a new foundation, not only does one's cultivation and magical power remain unaffected, but the new foundation can gradually devour and replace the original one. This silently completes the transformation, rectifying all previous flaws. With the oracle's explanation, Li Fan completely understood. To give an inappropriate analogy, the original foundation was like a wife who had endured the hardships of cultivating with the cultivator, overcoming the early stages of foundation establishment and golden core. However, as the cultivators soared to the greater heights of the nascent soul and soul transformation realms, they started to feel that their humble wife was not worthy of them. Thus, they planned to replace their wife. But the wife had walked through hardships together with the cultivator. Suddenly divorcing her would not only be emotionally difficult for the cultivator, but it would also draw criticism from others. They could only proceed slowly, first taking a concubine and then finding an opportunity to promote the concubine to the main wife. What Li Fan wanted was a way for the wife and the concubine to peacefully coexist. So, he asked the oracle about it. Since the oracle was planning to help, there was no pretense. He immediately transmitted the method of, establish Tao anew. Li Fan was overjoyed and expressed his gratitude. As he eagerly read the profound content of the technique, the oracle suddenly sighed, speaking of which, this method of, establish Tao anew, was created by a cultivator named Chen Shimei from our Tianyan province. This person was truly ruthless, and was willing to use any means for further cultivation. Just because the foundation treasure of the other party might be more suitable for oneself, he actually forcibly refined his Tao companion who had accompanied him for hundreds of years from the humblest of beginnings. Li Fan, immersed in the mysteries of the technique, was startled by this revelation. He had almost forgotten that anything in this realm could be turned into a foundation treasure. The slightly mocking voice of the oracle sounded again. Unfortunately, his luck wasn't good. The news leaked, and he angered a powerful female cultivator. He wasn't just skinned alive, even his consciousness was extracted and transferred to a black dog. Every day he suffers bullying from the other beasts. It's a fate worse than death. Hee, if Junior comes to our Tianyan province for a visit, perhaps you can still see him. To please this powerful female cultivator, many cultivators bring ferocious beasts to queue up and torment Chen Shimei. Even just thinking about it sent a shiver down Li Fan's spine. A woman's wickedness was not weaker than a man's at all. While Chen Shimei's character might be despicable, the technique itself is not bad. But judging by Senior's words, this technique could bring trouble. Why is that? Chapter 258. Zheng Hao's intent to form a golden core. Could it be because of that powerful female cultivator? Li Fan asked. Not really. It's a separate matter. She is reasonable, replied the oracle. Moreover, she personally revealed the secret of the, establish Tao anew, technique. The oracle shook his head. Oh, then why? Li Fan was curious. The oracle chuckled, avoiding a direct answer. Instead, he said with a mysterious tone, if every cultivator knew that they could potentially become ingredients for higher-level cultivators at any time, the world would be chaotic. Those big shots wouldn't want to see that happen. Li Fan remained silent, but there are no restrictions on using this technique. You can rest assured, the oracle said before ending the communication. Shaking his head to clear the cluttered thoughts, Li Fan began studying the, establish Tao anew, technique. After a long time, Li Fan couldn't help but praise, this Chen Shimei is indeed a rare talent. Comprehending heavenly treasures, merging them with your emotions, and wielding their law. After memorizing the exquisite details of the technique, Li Fan didn't rush to cultivate it himself. Instead, he once again observed Yi Feipeng. Li Fan knew Yi Feipeng's actions very well. He had no chance to come into contact with the established Dao Anu technique. So, how did he form the dual foundation treasures? How did it differ from the dual foundation treasures formed through established Dao Anu? After observing for a long time, Li Fan seemed to have some insights. The principle behind both methods was essentially the same. To use the earlier analogy of taking a concubine, if Chen Shimei's established Dao Anu was like scheming to convince his wife to accept a concubine, then Yi Feipeng was a natural polygamist. As the lord of the harem, his wife not only wouldn't object, she might even lend a helping hand in secret. What an excellent physique! Understanding the intricacies, Li Fan looked at the fatty with a different perspective. You've brought me more and more surprises. I wonder what changes will occur when you wake up again. I have a vague feeling that there's more to the Kong Yunxi's desperate gamble. Withdrawing his attention, Li Fan began cultivating established Dao Anu. In his case, it was like the wife was a charming and beautiful mistress who was proficient in the art of transformation, capable of assuming the appearance of any other woman. Thus, he avoided the trouble of continuous conflicts between the new and old foundation treasure. He only needed to establish the foundation using truth once more. 1 month later, the secret technique was successful. Li Fan checked his dantian and found that the representation of truth, the white jade light cluster, seemed to have been perfectly divided into 2 clusters. However, in essence, they were still a unified whole. With a thought, they could instantly return to unity. Delighted, Li Fan quietly left 10,000 Immortals Island and arrived at a remote and uninhabited underwater location. He tested the gains from this attempt. 7 Aperture Exquisite Heart, Rust Sword Dao Zan. Truth simultaneously transformed into 2 different artifacts. It went smoothly, without any hindrance. Kanghai Pearl, Rust Sword Dao Zan. In the blue light, a broken, rusted iron sword concealed a hidden killing intent, ready to strike at any moment. Excellent, Li Fan's eyes lit up. This is a great way to sneak attack an enemy. His thoughts turned again. What if they both become the same? In an instant, 2 identical Kanghai pearls appeared in Li Fan's dantian. However, to Li Fan's regret, the Kanghai pearls, at the moment of formation, inexplicably merged back into one. Furthermore, their power remained unchanged. Can I only increase the quantity and not strengthen the quality? Although it's a bit regrettable, it's still really good. While in the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, I often maintained use the 7 Aperture Exquisite Heart. In battles, I can simultaneously use the power of 2 different foundation treasures. After trying for a while and becoming familiar with the rapid transformation of the 2 foundation treasures, Li Fan returned to the Tianshuan mirror, satisfied. According to the secret technique's instructions, after opening dual foundation treasures, the difficulty of establishing new foundations will increase exponentially. Indeed, I feel that dual foundation treasures are already my limit now. I wonder if there will be opportunities to increase them in the future. Even so, dual foundation treasures are still beneficial for me. It's foreseeable that it will be much easier when I refine my golden core with the laws of heavenly calamity, Hanhai, ink death, and azure flame. Furthermore, the speed of switching treasures with truth has almost halved. There are 6 years left until the arrival of the crimson flame. With the many variables in this life, to be on the safe side, I should leave the Kong Yunxi ahead of time. On the 26th year, I can go to Shilin province. I need to also find an excuse to take He Zhenghao with me. Coincidentally, just as Li Fan was thinking about him, He Zhenghao sent a message. Upon checking it, Li Fan was pleasantly surprised. For more than a year, He Xingxin had been wandering around the Kong Yunxi with He Zhenghao. Not long ago, Heng Ruoshui finally issued the final ultimatum for her to return home quickly. Although He Xingxin was reluctant, she had played enough. Her father's life was no longer in danger. Not daring to disobey her mother's orders, the little girl tearfully bid farewell to her father after she agreed to visit often in the future. After sending away his daughter, a long-lost fighting spirit was ignited in He Zhenghao. It was as if he had returned to his youth, and he was full of motivation. With no regrets regarding his daughter, all knots in his heart were untied. He Zhenghao's cultivation speed was truly remarkable. In no time, he broke through the bottleneck and was about to condense a golden core. This message was to inform Li Fan that he intended to go out and find inspiration to form a core, and also to request Li Fan to accompany him. Li Fan naturally agreed. After the two met on the transmission square and used the teleportation array, they arrived at Linglong Island in the northwest area of the Kongyun Sea. They then flew west. 3,000 miles west of here, there is a peculiar sight. The three undersea faults. Over just a few hundred miles, the seabed forms three major faults like a steep staircase. Between each fault, there is a drop of 4,000 to 5,000 meters. Due to intense geological activity between the faults, the seabed has many created mountain ranges. These underwater mountain ranges have bizarre shapes and are magnificent, far surpassing the beauty of land mountains. Since I'm practicing the mountain and river hidden dragon technique, I want to observe this extraordinary scenery for inspiration. With the laws of earth veins, mountains and rivers, and the hidden abyss, I'll simultaneously form my golden core using three laws. Facing Li Fan, He Zhenghao didn't hide anything. He laid out his plans for forming the core. Looking at him, Li Fan could see his vigor and indomitable spirit. There was an indescribable self-confidence between his eyebrows. It was completely different from his previous meek appearance. They seemed like two different people. It seems that having an understanding daughter is quite important for middle-aged men. Li Fan thought silently, but he praised, fellow Taoist's approach is truly extraordinary, forming a core with three laws. I don't think there are many in this entire Kongyun Sea who can match you. Let me congratulate fellow Taoist in advance for your success. Chapter 259, Three Undersea Faults. Ha ha ha, I'll try my best to live up to fellow Taoist's kind words. He Zhenghao laughed heartily and couldn't wait to fly to the destination. We're here. After a short half-day, He Zhenghao suddenly stopped, then plunged into the sea. Li Fan followed, diving all the way to the depths of the sea. With his spiritual consciousness, he scanned the three major faults formed by the countless rugged mountain ranges below. Indeed, the atmosphere is extraordinary, with a unique charm as compared to mountains found on land. Li Fan couldn't help but think to himself. He Zhenghao stood on the bottom of the sea and closed his eyes, seemingly searching for something. Above his head, the 100 veins formation diagram suddenly appeared. In an instant, as if there was an inexplicable fluctuation emanating from the continuous mountain range below, faintly resonating with the formation diagram. He Zhenghao continuously adjusted his position, determining the optimal location. Li Fan quietly observed on the side. After a while, He Zhenghao suddenly opened his eyes, revealing a gleam. Above his head, the 100 veins formation diagram grew rapidly. In an instant, it became the size of 100 miles. The sharp-eyed Li Fan also noticed that the appearance of mountains and rivers in the formation diagram kept changing. Surprisingly, it gradually became more similar to the underwater mountain range shrouded below. The resonance fluctuation became stronger and stronger. When the scenery in the diagram completely matched the actual scene, He Zhenghao shouted loudly. The formation diagram emitted a dazzling white light, then seemed to completely merge into the lower mountains, disappearing from view. He Zhenghao pinched his fingers and continuously pointed. Beside him, the mountain and river formations subtly changed. It seemed to form a large formation, guarding He Zhenghao in the center. Hundreds of veins, mountains, and rivers, all incorporated together as a formation. What a great treasure! Li Fan had once peeked into He Zhenghao's interpretation of the 100 veins formation diagram, so he was not unfamiliar with this method of transforming mountains and rivers into a formation. Please, fellow Taoist, guard me, He Zhenghao said solemnly to Li Fan. Afterward, he gathered his thoughts and officially began core formation. Although this place was quite remote, and rarely visited by cultivators, Li Fan remained vigilant. He flew above He Zhenghao, overlooking his core formation process, while also monitoring the surroundings to act as a guard. It was different from the majestic scene of sword, water, and wind laws dominating the sky and earth when Zhang Haobo formed his core. In the beginning, there was only silence. No anomalies occurred, and He Zhenghao sat cross-legged above the three undersea faults, silent and motionless. If Li Fan hadn't faintly perceived that something seemed to be brewing beneath the seabed, he might almost have thought He Zhenghao was just in closed-door cultivation. Li Fan patiently waited. The process of accumulating strength took even longer than he had imagined. It took more than 10 days before any changes finally occurred. In the quiet underwater world, a heartbeat-like sound suddenly rang out. Thump! Li Fan squinted his eyes. The moment he heard the sound, he had a strange illusion. This underwater triple fault which stretched for 100 miles seemed to have suddenly come alive. It was as if a deep-sea behemoth that had been sleeping for countless years had suddenly awakened, and it brought him an inexplicable sense of danger. Thump, the heartbeat sound rang out again. The earth trembled slightly. Li Fan's sense of unease grew stronger. From the vision of heaven and earth, when he looked down at the mountain range below, Li Fan could faintly see. As the echoing heartbeat continued, deep in the earth, streams of earth-colored energy surged like blood rushing through veins. It brought endless power to the earth. The law of earth veins. Li Fan seemed to have gained some insight. The 100 veins formation diagram, which had expanded to 100 miles and merged with the seabed below, suddenly erupted with a bright light along its edges. It was as if a silver dividing line separated it from the original underwater mountain range. Heartbeats echoed as endless earth-colored earth veins energy surged from the boundless distant continental shelf. Like all rivers flowing into the sea, they were all absorbed by the formation. Just the law of earth veins alone has such momentum. Extraordinary, truly extraordinary, worthy of being the man I value. Li Fan praised repeatedly, looking forward to the remaining 2 laws. The force of earth veins continued to surge and gradually stabilized. He Zhenghao began to delve into the law of mountains and rivers. Li Fan noticed that the seawater, which should have been still, began to flow slowly at this moment. From the highest seabed, it flowed downward. With each drop of thousands of meters created by the faults, unique underwater waterfalls were formed as the momentum of the seawater increased. After the baptism of the 3 major faults, the slow undercurrents had turned into a surging underwater current. Sweeping through the underwater mountain range, it roared past. Compared to the heartbeat of the earth veins, it sounded like heavy breathing. The rushing currents traversed through the dense mountains. Strands of blue-green energy were absorbed by the array. Law of mountains and rivers. Li Fan's eyes flashed with a hint of understanding. The earth veins and the mountains and rivers complemented each other. Heartbeats and breaths echoed constantly in his ears. The 3 undersea faults below gave an increasingly obvious sense of vitality. Blue-green and earth-colored light continuously emerged from the seabed. It seemed to have attracted some cultivators to come and observe. Most of them could tell that a cultivator was breaking through the golden core stage. Later, Li Fan revealed his identity as a formation repairer of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. These cultivators, seeing that a member of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance was standing guard, dispelled their thoughts and chose to keep a distance. However, there were still some stubborn and unscrupulous cultivators lurking in secret. Most of them were nameless loose cultivators. Their strength was all below the golden core stage. Li Fan didn't hold back and directly captured them with his insect binding technique, throwing them far away. After 3 days like this, the spectacular scene gradually began to converge. The heartbeat sound gradually diminished. The breathing sound became lighter. The laws of earth veins and mountains and rivers gradually converged. The sense of vitality also slowly faded away. It reverted to the appearance of a normal underwater abyss. However, Li Fan could clearly feel it. This was hiding, not disappearing. A mysterious and obscure energy concealed all the anomalies, making them difficult to perceive. If Li Fan hadn't witnessed all the changes from beginning to end and meticulously observed from the vision of heaven and earth, he probably wouldn't have understood the inexplicable changes here. When Li Fan witnessed the abyss below, it was as if he was staring directly at an ancient ferocious beast ready to devour someone at any moment. Occasionally, waves of indescribable palpitations surged in his heart. Law of hidden abyss. Wonderful. The 3 laws are completed. It seems that fellow Taoist he is not far from completing the core formation. Li Fan thought to himself. The seabed returned to its previous quiet appearance. It was another 7 days later. However, He Zhenghao still hadn't succeeded in forming his core. The laws of earth veins, mountains and rivers, and hidden abyss had all stopped fluctuating. According to reason, he could complete the core formation at this point. But He Zhenghao had yet to make a move. It didn't seem like a failure. It was more like he was waiting for something. Chapter 260, 4-Law Golden Core. What is fellow Taoist he up to? Could it be that he's not satisfied with forming the golden core using 3 laws? Does he want to add another law? Li Fan, who had been standing guard, couldn't help but think to himself when he saw this scene. If it succeeds, everyone will naturally rejoice. But being too greedy might lead to trouble. However, it was already the most critical moment for the golden core formation, and Li Fan couldn't forcibly interrupt He Zhenghao's process. He could only be patient and wait. I wonder what the 4th law for fellow Taoist's golden core formation is. I didn't hear him mention it when he came with me before. It's unlikely that he concealed it from me. In that case, did he comprehend something new during the process of forming the golden core? Li Fan pondered silently. He didn't have to wait long. Soon, he knew the answer. Just half a day later, the 3 undersea faults below suddenly shook violently, as if experiencing an underwater earthquake. It wasn't due to the reappearance of the energy of the earth veins or mountains and rivers. Instead, Li Fan's expression hardened, and he became solemn. He raised his guard and stared intently below. With the increasing intensity of the tremors, cracks quickly appeared and extended, rapidly spreading across the seafloor and mountains. In just a moment, the 3 undersea faults that stretched for hundreds of miles were covered with cracks. It seemed like they were about to collapse at any moment. The shaking intensified, as if something was about to emerge from beneath. A muffled cracking sound came from the depths of the seafloor. The continuous rumble was unceasing. Li Fan turned to look at He Zhenghao and saw that his expression remained unchanged. It seemed like he had been waiting for whatever was hidden in the depths of the sea. After thinking for a moment, Li Fan didn't make any extra moves. Out of caution, he activated a disappearance talisman and moved far away. He silently observed the development of the situation. The earth roared, and the seafloor collapsed. The 3 undersea faults began to collapse with a bang. With this spectacle, when the seabed was almost completely destroyed from the inside out, the thing buried inside finally revealed its form. A magnificent 3-sectioned palace complex, spanning dozens of miles, appeared before Li Fan. The buildings emitted an ancient aura. On the tallest building, one could faintly see the words, Taiyuan Palace. What is this? The reappearance of an ancient sect's ruins. Li Fan was somewhat surprised because such a massive-scale ruin had never been uncovered in previous lives. Could it be that the fluctuations caused by He Zhenghao forming the golden core triggered a disturbance in the laws, breaking the seal of the ruins? In the midst of Li Fan's speculations, the earth continued to roar. Creaking and grinding sounds of compression and collision were incessant. Boom! It was as if something had burst open. The seafloor collapsed completely. The palace complex, led by the Taiyuan Palace, ascended slowly in front of Li Fan. Not good. Li Fan's face changed slightly. He saw that this massive group of buildings was about to crash up from below. At that moment, he was about to grab He Zhenghao and escape the area covered by the palace complex. Fellow Taoist, no need to worry about me. I have a way to escape. At this moment, He Zhenghao's voice transmission sounded in Li Fan's ear. Li Fan didn't make any pretense. His figure flickered repeatedly. In an instant, he escaped from the dangerous area. Looking back, he couldn't help but sweat for He Zhenghao. He saw He Zhenghao sitting upright, positioned above the ascending palace group. When the massive buildings, carrying unmatched momentum, were about to collide with him, he neither dodged nor avoided. Instead, he wore an expression of joy and spoke loudly, "The heavens are helping me." A formation diagram appeared above his head, and He Zhenghao faced the incoming group of buildings, continuously forming seals with his laws. In an instant, a dense yellow and blue aura covered the area, forming a massive net above the ascending palace. However, just moments later, this giant net was torn to shreds. In the face of such a massive group of buildings, it was like paper, incapable of blocking them even for a moment. Yet, with the net acting as a buffer, He Zhenghao avoided the fate of being directly crushed. With yellow and blue energy dispersing everywhere, He Zhenghao spat out a large mouthful of blood and swiftly retreated. Just before leaving, he reached out with his hands, as if grabbing something from the group of buildings. After He Zhenghao escaped, Li Fan quickly approached to check his injuries. He himself, however, paid no attention to this, wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. He stared at the continuously rising buildings, his eyes becoming increasingly bright. Can even mountains and rivers ascend? Indeed. Then, a look of ecstasy appeared on his face. The Ascension Law. This is the law that allows even mountains and rivers to ascend. Earth veins, mountains and rivers, hidden abyss, ascension. All 4 laws are complete, and my core is formed. He Zhenghao burst into wild laughter. Before the laughter faded, a violent wave of spiritual energy erupted from his body, forcing Li Fan to retreat. The yellow energy of the earth veins, the blue-green energy of the mountains and rivers, the deep black energy of the hidden abyss, and the purple-white energy of Ascensional appeared around He Zhenghao at once. They formed a vortex of colorful energy, intertwining and merging around the core of the 100 veins formation diagram. Watching this spectacular scene from the side, Li Fan couldn't help but feel emotional. I didn't expect fellow Taoist he to actually succeed in synthesizing 4 laws. A golden core cultivator with 4 laws, I'm afraid there are very few in the entire Kong Yunsi. From now on, his status is likely to be significantly different. This Ascension Law, like the Hidden Abyss Law, seems to resonate with his Mountain and River Hidden Dragon technique. I didn't expect that there would be such a ruin in the breakthrough location he chose. This is He Zhenghao's fortune. In his spiritual sense, the continuously ascending palace complex was rising faster and faster. It was about to emerge from the sea surface. However, Li Fan was slightly stunned, because the scale of the palace complex seemed to be shrinking continuously. Not an illusion. In that case, in an instant, Li Fan thought of something. In the 12th life, Li Fan had heard that during the 22nd year, a cultivation abode ascended from the seafloor in the northwest area of the Kong Yunsi, and then flew directly towards the direction of the Jushan province. Many curious cultivators followed, but none returned, disappearing without a trace. Is it that abode? Li Fan suddenly realized. I don't know which sect's ruin it is, but it can change size and fly like a magic treasure. Well, maybe I can publicize this and let other cultivators explore it for me. With it being so well preserved and the sect's ruins being so miraculous, it will certainly attract many cultivators to explore. Li Fan subconsciously started to plan. Not long after, a special fluctuation interrupted his thoughts. In He Zhenghao's abdomen, a golden core was about to take shape. On the surface of the golden core, the appearance of a formation was faintly visible. The aura on his body soared in an instant. He Zhenghao had successfully formed his golden core. At the same time, a large amount of feedback spiritual energy also appeared in Li Fan's dantian.